We're back, and it's like we never left on this Friday. Well, we haven't left, but someone in the NFL has left the building and will not be returning to that facility. We'll get to that momentarily. I'm Chad Withrow. Jonathan Hutton, he's out until Monday. Well-deserved time off. This is Hot Mic across the OutKick network, and we are live from the downtown Nashville 6th and Peabody studios with Old Smoky Moonshine and Yeehaw Beer. Special guest co-host Kelly in Vegas. Kelly Stewart on with us once again today. 3 hours last Friday. 3 hours yesterday. That's 6 hours so far. Going for 9 hours of programming excellence, content excellence is Kelly Stewart, and she's back with us today. Kelly, thank you for returning to co-host the show with me today. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I don't think I really had an option, though. Pretty sure I agreed to do it, and got to see it through.
This is not a volunteer thing. This was, you were assigned, you were appointed. It's like getting an appointment to West Point or the Naval Academy. You were appointed as co-host of this show. Either way, however you got here, we appreciate it. We're going to have a lot of fun for the next 3 hours. We got some good guests coming up on the show. Barrett, Sallee coming up in about 19 minutes from now. A little bit later in the show, Michael Fabiano will give us the latest and give us what we need to do with our fantasy football teams over the weekend. A lot of things happening over the course of the show. A lot of things happened last night on Thursday Night Football. I will be the first to raise my hand and say and admit when I'm wrong. And I'll say right now, I was dead wrong about Brandon Staley not getting fired because of the outcome of last night's game. Because going into that game, and I said this repeatedly, Davey asked the question earlier in the week, I said, I don't see that there's any way that the outcome of this game would affect his job status, being as he should not be the head coach right now. Things have been bad enough that I can't see it getting that much worse. At this point, you ride it out till the end of December, and then you fire the guy the Monday after the season ends. And then they gave up 63 points to Aiden O'Connell and the Vegas Raiders last night. And everything quickly changed. Kelly, I'll be the first to admit I was wrong, didn't think that he could do anything to get fired. I'll also say I will shake anyone's hand who expected 63 points given up to that Raiders offense, a team that scored 0 a week ago against the Minnesota Vikings. That was something to behold last night. What were your initial reactions to what was an awful night for the Chargers?
Oh, I was so happy. I got to go to bed at halftime.
That's always good.
Aiden O'Connell prop bet was all but there right before half, and it was such a blowout that I said, hey, I can go to bed early. That is a wonderful thing when you're an East Coaster these days. But side note, Chad, I thought Brandon Staley should have been fired 6 weeks ago. I tweeted this afternoon, what took you so long, Chargers? And that is the real honesty. Hey, listen, we listened yesterday and had several experts on. Armando said, hey, we have to see this out. They're not going to fire him mid-season. They don't do that anymore. And in my head, I thought, well, the Broncos did it last year, but that was kind of a unique situation. And he had me buying in that they were going to ride out the season with Brandon, but his team quit on him last night. That was just abysmal. You could just tell they did not want to be there.
Well, and going back to your opinion from 6 weeks ago, I agree with you. And that was my whole thing was it's been bad enough. I don't know why, if you've gone this long and he hasn't been fired. I mean, the guy got into a little verbal match with reporters after their loss to Green Bay. That's the first time I ever remember hearing his voice, was because he was getting so pissy with people after that game. If you've survived that and all this has happened, then why not just wait till the end of the season? They're not going to the playoffs regardless. What does it matter? And then I watched a team last night, and I think this is a team hoping their coach gets fired now rather than the end of the season. Because the one thing he could hang his hat on, I remember even after the Green Bay game, he said, well, my defense wasn't the problem. That was sort of the implication, right? Not in this one. The defense was pretty good. It was the offense, the turnovers that let them down in that game. The defense has been better as of late. And then 63 points to Aiden O'Connell. And congratulations, you're right on your bet. You were all over that one with the Raiders offense.
That was the only thing I was right on. I thought we were going to see a really boring, lower scoring game. Raiders defense has been playing much better. And as you just mentioned, so had the Chargers. I thought, hey, look, this is going to be just like kind of a snooze fest. Let's see some field goals kicked, but we're going to see a lot of airing it out from the Raiders because Josh Jacobs ended up getting announced out. It was just pitiful. I don't know how a professional football team just allows that to happen. But like you mentioned, they must have wanted Brandon Staley fired. That's the only explanation.
I feel like we owe it to Brandon Staley to hear his voice one more time, since he had something to say last night about his job status and was asked whether or not he deserved to be the head coach. So one final time for everyone to hear, here is Brandon Staley as a head coach in the NFL from last night.
Everything. I didn't do anything well enough to get us ready to play tonight.
So if that's the case, then why should you be the coach? If that's
games like this happen in the NFL. To every coach that's ever coached in this league, you can look at any great coach that's ever coached in the league. Sometimes games like this happen, and I don't need to retrace history, but it's part of sports. Sometimes there are games where it doesn't go right, none of it, and you got to put it behind you and you got to move on to the next thing.
I would like the SNL parody version of this where he actually brings out a scroll of all the great coaches that have lost terrible games at some point. And in fact, to show throughout history, I point to Bill Belichick in 2014 against against the Kansas City Chiefs in a blowout, where he pointed to they're on to Cincinnati after that. I mean, you knew that was the final nail in the coffin last night. And I think Brandon Staley's going to be a coordinator pretty quickly. I think we've probably seen the end of him as a head coach. But, Kelly, we've seen plenty of retread opportunities for failed head coaches in their first go-around that get another opportunity. I just don't think it's going to be Staley.
I would agree. USC still looking for a defensive coordinator. Then he doesn't have to go too far from where he currently lives. As of right now, I'm trying to think through my head on which other NFL team could really use a new DC. And that was the first one that came to mind. Maybe he can go down there and hang out with Lincoln Riley, both guys who do not want to take credit for their failures.
They do not. They do not want to own their failures, that's for sure. It looks like in New England it's going to be over for Bill Belichick if Tom Curran's reports and others are correct. What about Bill Belichick for the Chargers as an option of a team that's got a star quarterback where you can kind of work around that quarterback? Belichick knows now that his way to success is having a great quarterback, right? We've seen the results without Tom Brady versus the results with him. I wonder if that would line up, if the Chargers would want Bill Belichick at this point in his career, and if that would be the top option for him. What do you think?
A couple of things. First, poor Justin Herbert had to live through Mario Cristobal, the national treasure that was Anthony Lynn, and then Brandon Staley. I would love to see him with an awesome coach, especially one that is as militant as Bill Belichick. And I know a lot of people have heard stories about Bill Belichick. I've had a couple of friends play for him, and they said it was the closest thing to being in the military they have ever experienced. The guy runs a tight ship, and maybe that's exactly what a team in LA needs. You know, when you have beautiful weather year round, beautiful women around you all the time, and life is very lackadaisical, maybe you need a guy that's going to come down hard on you and force you to become better versions of yourself. The Chargers have consistently underperformed for a very long time at this point. And again, I think Justin Herbert does deserve to have a coach who wants to build an offense around him.
Yeah, and the Chargers are one of those teams. We talked about Pittsburgh. Baltimore's another one that comes to mind. They have a clear identity about who they are and the type of player they want and what they're trying to do. The Patriots long had that under Bill Belichick. They've lost their way. I don't know what they are or what they're even trying to do right now. And a lot of that stems from quarterback play, right? They missed on Mac Jones. That hasn't worked out with New England. You would get a very talented young quarterback in Justin Herbert. I get asked this question from numerous people, but they'll say, is Justin Herbert just the next Phillip Rivers? And I have to stop and think to myself, Justin Herbert needs to win more first to be Phillip Rivers. That's a guy that with all of his talent, they haven't put it together with him. So he's got some proving to do also, I think.
What was so wrong with Phillip Rivers?
Well, a guy's never going to win it. You know, that was the thing, is Herbert's always going to be in a bad situation. He's never going to win a Super Bowl.
And I would probably have to agree, but so are 32 other, quarterbacks on multiple other teams right now. Look, right now, I think Tom Brady said it best. There is no quarterbacks out there that have the prowess that he had. And that includes Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has a winning mentality. Patrick Mahomes has the athletic ability. But I do think some of light of his recent outbursts, we're starting to see some issues there. Josh Allen reminds me a lot of Brett Favre, gunslinger. Are you going to get an interception? You might. or you're going to get a really exciting touchdown pass. And there's a lot of those guys that I could commend. But Tom set the bar pretty high. And I think it's almost an unrealistic expectation for this point for any team to assume they're going to have any semblance of the next Tom Brady.
Yeah, it feels like not a changing of the guard in this NFL postseason that's about to happen, but there's a really good opportunity to not see necessarily new blood in most cases with quarterbacks that are in it to the end in each conference. But, is it Lamar Jackson and Tua Tagovailoa, right? Is it Brock Purdy instead of the Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen? Is it Brock Purdy in the NFC and Dak Prescott? What quarterbacks are we seeing with a chance to go win their first Super Bowl? That's going to be interesting to follow this postseason because I think the opportunity is there, especially for what you brought up, Kelly, with Patrick Mahomes on a team right now where they still haven't figured it out offensively. Someone who figured it out defensively. And I want to highlight this for a second because I ripped the last ESPN 30 for 30, the 97 great race for the Heisman or whatever. I thought it was poorly done, poorly executed. I thought ESPN conveniently left out some parts about their hand in winning Charles Woodson the Heisman that year and winning it over Peyton Manning. I think if you've got Peyton Manning on staff, if you're ESPN, you probably utilize him also. I'd like to have heard from him, but there were no first-person testimonials with Woodson, with Leaf, with Manning, with anyone. It was done with all old footage. Didn't really like it. Some of you may have loved it, but I didn't like it. Credit where credit is due, though. The latest ESPN 30 for 30, Minister of Defense, about Reggie White is terrific and well done. And a story told through the eyes of his son that grew up while Reggie White was progressing through his NFL career. The people they got on camera, from Brett Favre to J.J. Watt to Philip Fulmer from Tennessee to Seth Joyner, all of these great names from the past that were on camera and his family taking part in it as well is really, really remarkable. And I'm watching this thing, and I think to myself, we really don't spend enough time talking about Reggie White from a couple of different perspectives. One, free agency is what it is in the NFL today because of Reggie White. He was the guy who led the charge to sue the NFL to enact free agency. He was the first high-dollar free agent in NFL history back in late 1992, early 1993. And the sweepstakes for Reggie White was the biggest story in sports at the time. And his visits to the Jets, to the Browns, to the Falcons, it was newsworthy in every city. Eventually, he signs with the Green Bay Packers. He said God told him to go to the Packers. Bill Belichick, also on camera in this documentary, he's the one who had the joke when Reggie broke the news to Belichick he wasn't going to the Browns. And he said, because God told me to go there. Bill Belichick said, convenient that God told you to go to the place that offered you the most money. And Reggie White laughed. He said, yeah, they also offered me a really good contract. But Reggie White as trailblazer from a business perspective in the NFL, and Reggie White, the man of God, the religious man that he was, and the coverage of Reggie White at the time. When I say football and religion right now in 2023, there is one name that is popping in everyone's head, and that name is Tim Tebow. He is the resident Christian of football and sports when you think about that, right? Reggie White came before him. Reggie White said things that were very controversial at the time. He later changed some of his, not opinions, but when he went back and learned Hebrew and read the Bible in Hebrew, he changed some of his interpretation of what he was taught growing up about things. Fascinating, fascinating guy. Tim Tebow, who I love Tim Tebow. I'm fine with him. Tim Tebow never had a church Molotov cocktail to the ground in the middle of his playing career, the way Reggie White did. His church in Knoxville was burned to the ground, and he had to rebuild from that. Just incredible stories of perseverance, and a guy who died at 43 years old of a massive heart attack. Reggie White was married to his wife for 20 years, and he has now almost been dead for 20 years. That's really crazy to think about. 2004 was when Reggie White died. We need to talk more about Reggie White. That was my big takeaway from that. Reggie White, as J.J. Watt, Kelly, called him the greatest defender of all time. And he grew up in Wisconsin, a Packers fan. But he said not enough people will say that. He's definitely top 5. I put him in a group of 2. It's LT and it's Reggie White as the best defensive players in NFL history. And just a remarkable story. And I thought very well done by the people at 30 for 30 and ESPN on this documentary.
I'll have to check it out. Full disclosure, I started my NFL viewing career when the Broncos won back-to-back Super Bowls. And it wasn't until I started dating a Packers fan that I learned about Reggie White, because that is the jersey that he always wears. And I didn't quite understand it, right? Usually a guy named Brett, you'd think would own a Brett Favre jersey. And he said, no, my favorite player when I was a little kid was Reggie White. So I can't wait to check out that 30 for 30. It sounds absolutely awesome. And I appreciate you highlighting what a great guy Reggie White was.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And going back to your era, Kelly, and those Broncos teams, Reggie White and the Packers with Brett Favre beat the Patriots and Drew Bledsoe in 96, tried to repeat 97. Your Broncos got them. And then I think in 98, the Broncos beat the Falcons for the back-to-back Super Bowls. So definitely big-time crossover, AFC, NFC, with those Packers teams and Reggie White versus your Broncos teams, and then breaking out and winning those Super Bowls.
Yeah, I actually have the picture of John Elway, and I do not know who the Packers defender is, but John Elway ended up getting the first down there in that Super Bowl and broke a lot of hearts.
I'll always remember
Wisconsin.
Pat Bowlen saying, "This one's for John," when they won the Super Bowl, handing him the Lombardi Trophy. I don't have a Lombardi Trophy to hand to Barrett Sallee, but I'll give him something. We've got OutKick coasters here. Maybe I'll show him one of those. Terrific item. I can present this to him, something, because he's going to talk college football with us when we come back. This is Hot Mic across the OutKick Network.
Conor McGregor for president in Ireland. What do you think? The UFC star has floated the idea of running for office in the past, but now seems more serious than ever. This week, he took to X and explained why he would be a better alternative than the current competition if he runs. He looked at all of the candidates, and he said all of them with unbreakable ties to their individual parties' policies, regardless of what the public outside of their parties feel. Now, these parties govern themselves versus govern the people. Then you have me, 35, young, active, passionate, fresh skin in the game. I listen, I support, I adapt. I have no affiliation, bias, favoritism toward any party. They would genuinely be held to account regarding the current sway of public feeling. I'd even put it all to vote. There'd be votes every week to make sure I can fund. It would not be me in power as president. It would be the people of Ireland. It would be me and you. Honestly, from these two posts alone, he's already said more to me. I'm not a resident of Ireland. I won't be voting in this election, obviously. But as someone who would be voting in any type of election, this is the type of things that I would want to hear from a candidate. So even though I won't be voting, he's got my attention. He's speaking very thoroughly, very eloquently. I respect everything that he's saying so far. Now, McGregor has also been outspoken in recent weeks about the politics in Ireland following the stabbing of 3 children in Dublin, in which the suspect was claimed to be a foreigner. Now, the UFC star had a lot to say about Ireland's immigration policy, which occurred simultaneously, you can remember, with the mass riotings, which allegedly landed McGregor in hot water with tabloids reporting that he's being investigated now for inciting and hate speech, which, of course, makes absolutely no sense and paints an even poorer light on the politics going on in Ireland currently. Now, according to a poll that he put up on X, it seems like people are really taking the prospect of his running for president seriously. He asked people that if he did run, would they vote for him? The answer overwhelmingly was yes. There was nearly 220,000 people voting at the end of when this poll closed. Conor came in with 88% of the vote. Honestly, again, I've already mentioned that I think he'd be a good candidate, but why not? He's already truly laid out such an eloquent case for himself. He is fresh skin in the game. He has no self-serving interests. As a former UFC champ in the lightweight and featherweight division, which, by the way, he was the first UFC fighter to ever hold 2 simultaneous titles, he knows what it means to fight and also to win. That is a mentality that not everybody has, but not everybody can have. And also, he's young. He's outspoken. He's not afraid to stand up for what he believes in. And he has been showing us sports fans that for years. He's a proud countryman. He already has made plenty of his own money. So there is no need to get involved in shady politics or corrupt deals. And actually, it reminds me of somebody else who used to be president. Not in Ireland, but here in this country. Ringing any bells to any of you out there? In fact, I actually remember Conor McGregor calling Donald Trump the USA GOAT on MLK Day back in 2020. Listen, that says a lot about what he looks for in a politician, and I can imagine would hope to emulate one day if the occasion does indeed arise.
We're back on Hot Mic across the OutKick network. Got some college football to talk about. I'm Chad Withrow, Kelly Stewart, guest co-hosting today. Barrett Sallee with CBS Sports, been on the show a bunch. Time to talk a little college football. And Barrett, it's difficult to know exactly where to start because now we're getting into the time where we can talk about games. I think there's 7 bowl games tomorrow, in fact, but there's so much off the field to discuss too. So we'll try to strike a balance of a little bit of both of that. With this story, isn't it so Nick Saban and Alabama to hire a former Michigan staffer just in advance of their playoff game against Michigan? It's sort of the reverse Connor Stallions, and it doesn't surprise me at all with Alabama. What did you make of that?
I laughed. I laughed hysterically when that news broke because you're right. It is the most Nick Saban thing you can possibly think of. And that the joke you made about Connor Stallions is the first thing that I thought of too. Can't scout Michigan because he probably doesn't know much about him. He hasn't planned on playing Michigan, so you might as well hire one of those guys that knows exactly what's going on. So yeah, I mean, I think for Alabama, in reality, it probably won't matter all that much because they are so staffed up. But it's a good way to get some buzz going for your program. And honestly, the way Alabama's been playing, I don't think they're going to need much help to beat Michigan. I think Alabama right now with a month to prepare and time to sort of decompress after figuring out Jalen Milroe on the fly, that's going to be a dangerous team in that Rose Bowl.
So the plight of Kyle McCord so far, this not even off season because Ohio State still has a game left, but enters the transfer portal. Looks like all signs are pointing him to Nebraska. That's not happening. And there's a lot of other stuff going on in Nebraska. We'll talk a little bit later with a guest about that. But I keep thinking about the Ohio State perspective on this. If they're really going to stay in-house with the next quarterback and they're happier with that, why start Kyle McCord all year if that's the case? If you wanted him to leave, I guess, Barrett, my question is, who wanted this? Was this McCord wanting out? Was this Ohio State pushing him out because they wanted someone else to start? How did we get here with McCord?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both, not to dodge the question, but I think Kyle McCord, they figured out this year. They thought he could be a difference maker, but he really wasn't that guy. He obviously still got them to 11-0 and, on the brink of a Big Ten East championship, but he's not CJ Stroud. He's not Dwayne Haskins. He's not JT Barrett. I think they wanted him to be that. That's why he got the start over Devin White. But to me, I think it became abundantly clear to not only the outside world, but also to people within that building that Kyle McCord is not a guy you win with because of him. You can win with him, but not because of him. And so I think that ultimately led them to say, all right, dude, look, we're losing, a lot of our star offensive players. Let's go in a different direction. Let's completely rip the Band-Aid off and move on. So I think Kyle McCord probably recognized that his time at Ohio State was up, or at least he was going to have to fight and be the underdog to get that job in 2024. So, he's good enough to start somewhere. He's good enough to start at a Power 5 level, maybe just not at Ohio State. So go find another gig. There will be plenty of people will want to pay Kyle McCord because, like I said, he is effective. You can win with him. but just not because of him.
Barrett, yesterday we spoke to some other really insightful college football insiders such as yourself, but I wanted to still get your opinion. Over 1,300 kids right now in the transfer portal and alma maters such as my own. Lots of alumni, lots of melting down over transfers that maybe do or do not matter. You have any insight as far as maybe where some of these high profile guys are going to go, or anything such as that? Like, I've heard rumors of Will Howard to USC. We do know that a couple of guys have no contacts because they've already got some people in place. I'm just kind of looking for maybe a little insight before bowls start.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are on Dylan Raiola watch right now, the high school kid. But, he's obviously not part of that transfer portal. There are other players to look at. You mentioned Will Howard. I think he's certainly one of them. I know down at Florida State, Cam Ward arrived for an official visit today, in fact. And so to me, that's kind of the one that everybody's got their eye on because he's so highly thought of, according to most services. I don't necessarily buy the Cam Ward hype. I think it's a little aggressive. It's too much too quickly. It's kind of like Sam Hartman last year for Notre Dame when he transferred to the Irish from Wake Forest. So I think all eyes are on Cam right this very moment. Yeah, Will Howard is part of that too. I think the bigger thing to me in terms of the transfer portal market is who's still left out there that could hop in. And I think there are some quarterbacks for some highly touted teams that might be using their performance for leverage. And I'm talking about Carson Beck, and I think there are others as well that could be doing that. Dante Moore's a guy that in the transfer portal from UCLA, he's one to keep an eye on. I think he probably needs to make a decision quickly because you don't want dominoes to fall in certain directions. And I think, like we talked about just a minute ago, Kyle McCord is one of those guys because he was going to go to Nebraska, but then dominoes started falling and where he wanted to go really wasn't there for him anymore. So, it's wild. It's wild out there. And, it goes both ways. It goes with players, really wanting out, but players also using their success for leverage in order to get more money out of whatever collective they're working for at the moment.
Yeah, I try not to fault those kids, but some of those opt-outs, transfer portal kids have not been fun to watch from a certain fan perspective. Speaking of being a fan, you are a huge college football fan, such as myself. And I've really kind of seen the decline of the bowl games over the last couple of years as it potentially hurting college football. So I want to know, outside of the New Year's Day bowls and outside of the college football playoff, which bowl game are you most excited about?
Well, I would say I like these bowls more. I think one of the things after COVID, not counting this game towards the 4 games that you could redshirt, I think is a really nice sort of alteration to this because yeah, you have opt-outs, but you also have guys that, you can play that, you'll see a lot of the upcoming season. So I think that's interesting. Plus from a gambling perspective, we always like to throw some money down. I know you do, Kelly, too. You mentioned outside of the playoff, I know you said no New Year's Six, but Peach Bowl between Penn State and Ole Miss, I am super excited about. But one tomorrow that I am just thrilled for is, I think it's the first one of the day, Georgia, Southern, and Ohio, because I just can't, it's a train wreck with the amount of Ohio players that are out, and Georgia Southern has high risk, high reward. So very excited about that one. Really excited about Auburn and Maryland as well, because I think you will see both of those teams let loose. I think for bowl games, we're all fans. We just want to see weirdness. We just want to see things get wild. We want to be entertained because these are TV shows, right? So I think Auburn, Maryland, with what Hugh Freeze has put together, there's a revitalized, I think, mindset there. They're very excited about the future. And for Maryland, sort of the same thing. And also Talia Tagovailoa is going out perhaps in style as well. So, I think that's one to keep an eye on in Music City. It's not one that I think gets a lot of pub, but it's one that I think should be a lot of fun. And like I said, fun's really all that matters here because, this is entertainment, right?
Yeah, that Auburn-Maryland game is going to be about 3/4 of a mile from where I'm sitting right now in downtown Nashville. The Music City Bowl has lucked out, and then I feel like it frequently gets teams that are actually all in on playing against another one in a bowl game. I think about that wild Tennessee-Purdue game a couple of years ago after Josh Heupel's first year that was a sold-out crowd, overtime, back and forth, tons of points. tons of wild moments. The Music City Bowl has gotten lucky. And I'm with you, Barrett. I think Auburn and Maryland very motivated to play in that game, so that should be fun. I want to ask you your choice between these three quarterback situations. Right below the top 2 or 3 guys in the portal that we've been talking about a lot, you've got Brock Vandagriff going to Kentucky. You've got Grayson McCall going to NC State. You've got Tyler Van Dyke going from Miami to Wisconsin. Which team landed with the best situation when you look at those 3 guys and the pairing with their new program?
Man, I think Brock Vandagriff has the most talent, but I'm just not sure what he's going to get out of Kentucky. I mean, I think Kentucky is probably a bad fit for him. I'd probably go Grayson McCall. I think NC State is a very similar offense to what he had at Coastal Carolina, especially when Jamie Chadwell was there for the previous 3 seasons prior to this one. So I think Grayson McCall, though, what he can do within that offense, how they typically use quarterbacks like him is going to be a lot of fun. With Vandagriff, like Devin Leary didn't succeed, right? So the year before that, Will Levis, who, you guys know in Nashville is, doing, I guess he's doing up and down. He did great against my Falcons. I don't appreciate that, but he was just okay his final season at Kentucky. What's Vandagriff going to do there? Like, what's exciting about that offense that makes him or anybody think that, he can evolve into a star there, especially with Devin Leary coming in and everyone thought he was going to be high up on draft boards. At Wisconsin, man, I don't know what that program is under Luke Fickell. I mean, I think that when you see how they operated last year, it felt like they were sort of a hybrid of that old school to that new school. So I don't know how he fits into that one. That's a tough spot.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that Kentucky is a good example of this. Those programs that are not traditionally very good, that have gone all in with their NIL and their collective on luring prospects in from the transfer portal and not necessarily high school prospects. Ole Miss is another one that comes to mind. Kentucky lands Chip Trainum from Ohio State, too, is a very good running back. What do you think about that mentality for those programs? Ole Miss, Kentucky specifically, is that the right route for those programs instead of trying to compete with the big boys in the SEC in terms of high school recruiting?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I think it depends on the team, depends on the situation. Right now, I think when you look at how Ole Miss is operating, they're operating as if they have a great chance to win right now. That's why they're opening up their pocketbooks. They look at their schedule and see, hey, you know what? We got a chance to win in 2024. The schedule is easy. Let's go for it right now. I think Lane did that last year too. And he's going to be the portal king, but I think that's part of this, that you sort of look at how the impact of these transfers can affect them immediately. And I think Kentucky is sort of in a similar spot where they look at the 2024 SEC schedule. Obviously, we saw exactly how it would work out on Wednesday, but they knew their opponents, right? All these schools knew their opponents. So, and they knew home road splits. So I think a lot of these schools will look at that. Okay, how much can we affect next year's team, knowing who we're going to play, where we're going to play them, and what the path might be? And so I think that's sort of one of those things that we didn't really think about during the transfer portal era when it started, but it certainly is being discussed at a lot of these schools, and Ole Miss and Kentucky included. But, I think for those schools also, you got to play with the big boys. If you got the money, you got to use it, and you got to use it every single year as much as you possibly can and as appropriate as you possibly can. Otherwise, you're not going to get it the following year from the collective, because they'll view that as you misusing funds. So it's a wild new world, man. It's crazy how things change so quickly in college athletics.
So I refer to these programs as almost elderly, right? The programs that are able to convince 5th, 6th-year guys to pay them a little bit of money to come back for that COVID year of eligibility. And if you can do that on the offensive and defensive line, you've got something for some of these teams. How much are you starting to look at that as a key factor? I know we're not through the postseason yet, but as you start to look at what's going to transpire this offseason and who you're going to be looking at for next season, how quickly are you going to look at guys that are 24, 25 years old that are back for that COVID year that's going to really help solidify some teams?
Yeah, grown adults, right? It's sort of what you see at BYU when they go on their missions. They come back 2 years later, they have kids, they have, insurance, they have all that stuff. They have grown men responsibilities. And so you see that at BYU every year. But now, like you said, you're going to see it all around the country because you're going to have players take that COVID year. There are players that were in the class of 2018 who are still eligible. In fact, I think there's still one from 2017 that's still eligible. So yeah, along the offensive and defensive lines, that's the biggest part of that, is because you see those grown man bodies. And, I think that's where developmental teams are going to really benefit, because they're the ones that will have continuity in addition to that age, the fact that they've been around for 4 or 5 years. But again, if you're an offensive, I talked to a coach last week. He said that any decent offensive lineman, decent, not great, decent, is probably getting $800 to $1 million right now. And FCS or Group of 5 transfers to Power 5 are probably getting 600, he said. So it's a good market out there for offensive linemen, because there just aren't that many of them. If you're a 6'5", 350-pound dude who has feet like a ballerina, you're going to get a ton of money because teams are desperately in need for you. So I think on the defensive line, that is what's so fascinating about this. I think what you'll see moving forward too over the next couple of years is you need rotation, right? You need 8 or 9 defensive linemen to be successful at an elite level. So if you're a defensive lineman and you're going to be part of a rotation, and you're probably only going to get 30 snaps a game, no matter if you're a starter, a superstar, or a backup, go take a ton of money, be a reserve, and then keep your body fresh for the NFL and still collect all that money, because there will be schools that have big budgets that understand, hey, we have to absolutely pay for, the 8th or 9th guy on the defensive line, because that's how you win a championship.
Barrett Sallee, CBS Sports, at Barrett Sallee on X. We appreciate you taking time to join us, my man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, y'all. See you.
Michael Fabiano, Sports Illustrated fantasy analyst, coming up next. This is Hot Mike.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafty flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Taste of a Southern legend.
We're back. Hot mic across the OutKick network. We got Michael Fabiano with us, Sports Illustrated senior fantasy analyst at Michael_Fabiano. Michael, I'm being told we're having some slight technical difficulties, so if you don't see yourself on the screen, don't worry about it. We can hear you just fine. You may come and go at times, so don't let that freak you out. I know you're a pro's pro. I probably need to tell you that. You're going to be just fine either way, but just know we can hear you just fine, even if you don't see yourself. I had to start with that.
Nobody needs to see me. You know, it's all good. It's all good. You guys take the on-camera time. I'll just kind of give you some fantasy advice here in the background.
Well, speaking of not seeing something, apparently the Chargers offense couldn't see the Raiders defense last night based on the turnovers we saw and the Raiders defensive play. I've got the Raiders defense on my fantasy team. I know I had 26 points, I think, from their defense special teams last night. What about that Raiders defense?
Crazy good streaming option. They were in my top 10 on the week, and I didn't think they were going to do that. I mean, nobody did. And the Chargers offense was awful. The team gave up on Brandon Sallee, who, by the way, is no longer a head coach in the National Football League. Some would say that he lasted longer than he should have. But the Raiders, as a team, came out and really helped us when we needed it the most. Not that you started Aiden O'Connell, but he had a big game. Zamir White, in the place of Josh Jacobs, had a good game. Devontae Adams had a massive game. Jacoby Myers had a good game. Michael Mayer had a good game. I mean, it was everybody. So it was a good night for the silver and black. And even for some of the Chargers, I mean, Austin Eckler aside, Josh Palmer had a big game. Easton Stick. I don't know anybody who started Easton Stick unless you're in the Superflex League. But, I mean, he had 18 points and he turned the ball over 2 or 3 times. So it was a pretty good fantasy night for a lot of players, especially the Raiders, of course.
Kelly?
Yeah, I'll jump right in here. Michael, you and I spoke a little bit last week in terms of how I set my fantasy lineups based on my bets. Well, now I'm just a big fat fantasy loser because I am not in the playoffs, but I do still want to look at this from a gambling perspective. So each week you do your start and your sits. Let's talk about a couple of big name guys. Let's use Patrick Mahomes. So if you would recommend sitting him as opposed to, a Brock Purdy, would you also consider going under his passing yards? This week in particular, I was looking at going under his rushing yards because we know what that Patriots defense does to mobile quarterbacks.
Patriots defense has been really good. Okay. I mean, against Pittsburgh, Mitch Trubisky, I get it. That was not very good, but typically at Gillette Stadium, they've been very tough. So yeah, I mean, again, we talked about that, all that kind of stuff sort of, melts into one from a wagering perspective, the fantasy, but you still want to look at the numbers specifically. How many passing yards is the over under for Mahomes, rushing yards, etc. Decide based on what the Patriots, or in this case, have done, especially against quarterbacks at home, looking at what the player, in this case, Mahomes, has done overall on the road. The stats. I mean, there's just so many of them. So I would be taking all of that into consideration. But again, they all kind of melt into one. So if Mahomes is not a great play from a fantasy perspective, chances are he's probably not going to be a great play from a props perspective, which means you may be going under on some of the bigger props for Patrick Mahomes.
Now, this one's just to make myself feel better because I did not come in last place. I barely missed the playoffs. Clay Travis, of course, got in over me, so he's never going to let me live that one down. But the last place person always has some fun, whether in our league it is an extra fee they have to pay or some sort of, we'd call it a punishment. What's the funniest fantasy football punishment you've heard for last place to have to ever do?
And Michael's never finished last, by the way, Kelly, so he has no idea what it actually feels like to be punished this way, but he can probably tell someone else's experience.
Yeah. I honestly, yeah. I mean, I don't finish last, so if I did, I would be in a little bit of trouble here. But I've heard of people who had to dress up as a baby and go to Denny's and sit with a giant stuffed bear and have lunch or dinner. We've all heard of that whole Waffle House situation where you have to spend 24 hours in a Waffle House, and every waffle that you can eat will take an hour off the time that you have to spend there. And then, of course, there's the, traditional sign holding up in front of people, maybe on a public street. I actually made that happen to Scott Hansen one year. We played against each other in a matchup, and Scott had to hold a sign up outside of NFL Network that said, I suck at fantasy football or something like that. I did that to The Miz too, WWE superstar.
That's awesome.
Where he had to hold up a sign on social media that says, Michael Fabiano is my daddy in fantasy football. There's all kinds of stuff. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff we probably don't even want to think or talk about on the air that people do to each other, tattoos and all that kind of thing. I'm not going there. But it is certainly a lot of fun if you can come up with a not too embarrassing and certainly hopefully not illegal punishment for the last place team.
Kelly, didn't Clay auto draft or something, or use his kids to draft his team this go around, or was he actually there for the entire draft?
We've had a lot of Clay Travis terrible fantasy football moments over the years. This year, we let him say, okay, Clay, there are plenty of dates available. Which day works best for you? And then he still had his kids draft. Clay has tried to auto draft or had to draft from an airplane, lost Wi-Fi, got put on auto draft. Clay at one point in time had like 9 Titans players on his roster. I mean, he has had some real snafus over the years, so I'm happy for him that he finally made the playoffs.
There's no Titans players in Michael's start list this week. I can tell you that, Michael. Let's start with Brock Purdy.
Yeah, well, no Titans that aren't obvious. Derrick Henry smashes the Houston Texans, so if you're not starting him, you may want to take up another hobby. Brock Purdy is in a good spot this week against the Cardinals. They've given up right around 18 points per game to quarterbacks. Purdy beat them for over 21 points earlier this season. So start Brock Purdy. Zeke Elliott. How about Zeke, right? I mean, the old man who had a 66% touch share last week. That's crazy town. He's got the Chiefs this week. The volume makes him a very good play. Najee Harris has got a good matchup. Remember, there are 3 games on Saturday, including Steelers, Colts. The Colts have been very generous to running backs. 4th most points allowed on the season. 3rd most points allowed since week 12. Zay Flowers has been very good, 20-plus points in 2 straight games against the Jaguars this week. They've given up 5 touchdowns to wide receivers in the last 4 weeks. I also like Terry McLaurin. Now, I know the last game before the bye, McLaurin did nothing, like literally nothing. And after the game, somebody asked him about doing nothing, and he said, well, at least I got some cardio in. That, to me, is squeaky wheel. And the squeaky wheel will get the grease against the Rams, who have really struggled against wide receivers over the last 4 weeks. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game in L.A.
Let me ask you one question, just because you brought up Zeke Elliott, and I happen to have him on my bench right now, and you have him as a start option. Should I start Zeke Elliott over Joe Mixon or Rachaad White on my team? Is this what you're saying?
I would actually start him over Mixon. They're both very good plays, though. Rachaad White, no. Rachaad White, gets no respect. I mean, that guy's like the Rodney Dangerfield of fantasy football running backs. He has legitimately been an elite running back since week 7. He needs to be in every lineup moving forward, and he should be, have been in most lineups for the last month and a half.
You've never steered me wrong, so I'm going to roll with it. Who should we roll with the guys that probably shouldn't be starting for fantasy rosters this week?
I'm not going to say probably shouldn't be starting with Patrick Mahomes. I just want to give people something to think about. Patrick Mahomes is not an elite fantasy quarterback this season. I'm sorry, he's not. And you can't blindly start him. Now, there's a list of quarterbacks that I would play ahead of him. It's not a long list, but if you have Dak Prescott, if you have, say, for example, someone like Matthew Stafford, who's been on fire, or a Brock Purdy, you got to think about sitting Mahomes. He has scored 16.9 or fewer points in all but one of his last 6 games. During that time, he's averaging 14 points per game. That's not good. And in 2 of the last 3 weeks where Tommy DeVito and Mahomes were playing, DeVito outscored him. It's Tommy DeVito. It's crazy. And Mahomes has got a bad matchup against the Patriots this week. They've been very tough at home against quarterbacks. So just something to think about. Also, don't love Ken Walker this week against the Eagles. They've given up 4 total touchdowns and the second fewest points to running backs this year. James Conner, before the bye, went crazy in a revenge game against the Steelers. Now he's got the Niners. Tough matchup. The last time he faced them, 6.6 points. That's not good. Chris Godwin's banged up, dealing with a knee. Even if he does play, I don't love the matchup against Green Bay. And then T. Higgins, I mean, geez Louise, what's going on with him? He's had 2 good games all year long, 1 really good one, 3 games in double digits. That's it. Everything else has been single digits. The matchup's not great. That's a game that's being played tomorrow. And even though Jake Browning's been pretty good, I still have less faith in T. Higgins without Joe Burrow.
How do you view Jake Browning for a pickup option at quarterback?
2 QB league starter, no question about it. If you're like, I'm not playing Jake Browning over Patrick Mahomes, although he's been better than Mahomes the last couple of weeks, which is still crazy. I'm still not going to do that. But, if you're desperate, if you lost Justin Herbert, for example, who's out for the rest of the season, if you are playing the matchups at quarterback every week and don't have like that elite option, maybe you play Browning. He's been very good. The matchup's not great this week against the Minnesota Vikings, but he has proven that, he's not Joe Burrow, but at least he's been a pretty good alternative, better than I think we expected.
Few viewer submissions for you, Michael. Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Jaylen Warren starting this week?
Jaylen Warren. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to start for the Chiefs. The matchup's not great, though. And even though the volume is somewhat there, Jaylen Warren's got a much better matchup.
So you got to sit one of these guys. Rashee Rice at New England, Drake London at Carolina, or DeAndre Hopkins at home versus the Texans. You're sitting one of those three.
Last week, we loved the Drake. This week, we hate the Drake. Bad matchup. Seinfeld, anybody? Yeah.
It's a great reference.
Yeah. So, I'm going to sit London out of that group.
It hurt for those that don't understand Seinfeld references. I certainly got that one.
People don't, though. Like, now Seinfeld references are like kind of older.
Yeah,
right?
Kelly just raised her hand.
Thank you. I got eviscerated on Twitter earlier today because my co-host every single week on a different podcast makes a Seinfeld reference, and I just sit there going, "What did I miss?"
Did you not watch syndication as a kid? Like that?
No. I didn't watch Seinfeld when I was 8 years old.
I did.
No.
Something must be wrong with me, but
now.
I loved it.
No, I definitely don't watch it now. Actually, I got in an argument. I said The Office was better than Seinfeld, and people did not like that.
They're both very good. I'm fine with that argument because I think The Office is also good, but Seinfeld.
Curb Your
classic.
Enthusiasm. Watch it. It's
I can't.
hilarious.
It makes me so uncomfortable.
Good.
Larry David makes me beyond uncomfortable.
I love him. I actually met him at NFL Network years ago. And I went up to him because I love him. Like, he's one of the funniest people on the planet as far as I'm concerned. Went up to him and said, "Hey, Larry, my name's Michael Fabiano. Nice to meet you." He goes, "Hey, Fabiano." I said, "Yeah, it's a good Irish name." And I made him laugh. And I wanted to.
That's impressive.
I wanted to Costanza him. I wanted to say, "All right, I'm leaving, folks. I'm leaving on a high note." That was it. But I'll never forget that. I made Larry David laugh. So, it's funny. He dresses exactly the same way in real life as he dresses on the show. And Jeff Garland is a good buddy of mine. So that makes me love that show even more. I'm a big fan. If you don't watch Curb, you're missing out.
I mean, the name dropping in this visit alone,
sorry,
it's amazing though. The Miz, Jeff Garland, Larry David. I got a great.
I get that all the time, but they're just my friends, So it is what it is. Not Larry David. He's not. I'd love to be friends with Larry David, but I can't say that.
I'd love to be friends with you. I got a great story about a buddy of mine who met Larry David at a urinal at a wedding one time. The interaction was not as pleasant as the one that you had with him. I'll explain that one off air at some point. Michael, you're the man. You got the best friends going also. Appreciate you joining the show weekly. Thank you so much.
All right, you got it. Take care and happy holidays.
Absolutely. Happy holidays to you as well. Man, Michael Fabiano's Rolodex is quite impressive. Kelly's lack of knowledge of Seinfeld, not as impressive, but we'll let it slide.
I'm just not old enough, Chad. I'm sorry.
It's not for everyone. We could dispute that another time. Maybe you are, maybe you
aren't.
All you
want, but I wasn't old enough to watch Seinfeld.
Maybe you are, maybe
TV.
you aren't. We'll figure that out. You know what else we're going to figure out? Why a Georgia lawmaker thinks that the Orange Bowl should now be in the college football playoff and the grandstanding taking place with that. We'll discuss that more when we come back. This is Hot Mike across the OutKick Network.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement, and today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of the Southern Legend.
We are back. It is Hot Mic across the OutKick Network. I'm Chad Withrow. Hutton will be back on Monday. Kelly Stewart, Kelly in Vegas, doing a great job co-hosting for us. 1 hour down, 2 hours left. We got a lot coming up, including this hour. Sean Callahan, who does a great job covering Nebraska, is going to join us to talk about what in the world is going on at Nebraska, where suddenly the Huskers are red hot. They're back, baby. They're telling Kyle McCord thanks, but no thanks. And they're going after the #1 quarterback in America, Dylan Raiola, whose dad happens to be a big part of Nebraska football history. So we'll talk with Sean Callahan coming up a little bit later in the show. Plenty of college football transfer portal related headlines to get to you here in this segment. But first, a bit of a programming announcement. Want everyone that's an OutKick fan to know, starting January 3rd, the only place to catch OutKick's original shows will be at the website, OutKick.com. So, again, if you want to watch the show live, you go to OutKick.com. You're going to hit the Watch tab, and you're going to be able to watch every show live. That doesn't mean that OutKick shows are going completely away. This one included from YouTube. Once the show ends, there's going to be a YouTube portion of the show. My understanding, probably the first 30 or 40 minutes of every show will be cataloged and available on YouTube. But for those that watch every show live, or you want to watch an OutKick show live, go to the website, outkick.com, hit the watch tab. That is starting January 3rd, 2024, by the way, for those confused. Not 2025, not a year from now, just a few weeks from now, January 3rd, 2024, outkick.com/watch. And remember, you can still shop for all things OutKick right now at the OutKick store as well. Kelly's on with us. Kelly, help me out here on this story where there's an injunction that's taking place. So there's like a 2-week window where players that have been held up by the NCAA with a second transfer can now play. But now the NCAA, in a questionnaire from schools, is saying it's a frequently asked questions deal. They're saying, well, if they play, that also counts against their eligibility once this is over. And I'm thinking, what is the point? What's going on? They have a 2-week window in college basketball where they could play for 2 weeks, and then they go back to being ineligible. I'm having a hard time really understanding the significance of this story. What do you think about it?
This is tough because I read a couple of different articles. I even tried. Now, I'm not a lawyer. Very obvious that I'm not a lawyer.
You're not Clay Travis, who is a lawyer, right?
That is who I should have called. I should have said, Clay, can you please make this make some sort of sense? But bottom line is, when does the NCAA do anything that makes any damn sense, Chad? They don't. It is very frustrating. And this only applies to, from what I understand, players that have transferred at least 2 times, right? So they used an example
more than once, right? You get
more than once.
You get one freebie, right? You get one get out of jail free card. You can leave your program, go anywhere else. One time, no punishment. You do it a second time, you got to sit out a year, which was the old rule. So that's what this eliminates that for people. But the NCAA is also saying this will count against their eligibility if they play in this 2-week window, even though the courts are saying they can for right now. That's where I'm having a hard time following it.
And does this only negatively affect basketball? Because the way that the transfer portal is working in college football and when it's open, right? So, for example, there's a running back that played at Florida State. Then he went to K-State for a year. Now he's with Boston College. He's not losing a year of eligibility. But the example that they're using here is saying that a UNLV player who's now transferred twice, who had an awesome game against Creighton, in fact, I was very happy to see that. I took the points in that one, is allowed to play, but then he won't be allowed to play.
Well, at least he helped him get that big win over Creighton for UNLV. So good for him. That's the one example I've seen also of someone using this to their benefit. Davey Hudson is not an attorney, although he will tell you that he did attend law school. So he's the closest to an attorney in our studio right now. Graduated law school.
Okay.
Passed the bar, did not, though, Dave.
I decided to just go straight into media right after graduating because I realized I didn't want to
traditional
be
route
for
of
the rest of my
graduating
life.
law school, not taking the bar to instead go into media. So go ahead, Kelly. You got a question. I can tell.
No, I'm confused as to Davey, who paid probably close to $75,000, $80,000 to go to law school, and then said, I'm not going to take the bar. I think I'd rather have a job in media. That is pretty wild.
It was right around 60. So, yeah. But no, I will say real quickly, fortunate for the education, it allows me to take a lot of situations and view it differently than somebody who didn't gain that level of education.
I could have given you life experience for free that would have allowed you to do that as
I've
well.
got
You would
life
have to pay.
experience,
You
too.
could pay me $60,000. And I could put you
know
into
what? He
some
gets to wear a
situations to
Preds
make some
jersey
decisions.
to work as opposed to a suit.
That is
This
true.
is Chad's favorite clothing item that I own.
It is nice. It pops, Kelly. Wouldn't you say when he comes on the screen with that Preds
that
sweater?
yellow.
I love
pops.
a good hockey sweater.
It works perfectly with a Nashville sign behind him also. It's a good look.
I'm not a jersey guy, but this is just a comfortable hoodie with the logo on the front. And I'm like, all right, I'll rep it. But as it relates to
Davey,
this,
by the way, not a jersey guy in that he doesn't wear a lot of jerseys, and he's not Tommy DeVito. I just want to clarify. Neither one of those type of jersey guys. Go ahead, Davey.
But no, what I was going to say is simply what the NCAA is saying in this situation is even though that 14-day TRO, the temporary restraining order, has been put in place, so you could play right now. But let's say that whenever this case, like that 2 weeks is up, if the ruling gets reinstated to where players that were not ineligible or that weren't eligible to play decided to play during that 2 weeks, Well, if the ruling stays the same, they're not going to be eligible anymore, and that 2-week period would count as a season of eligibility. So they're losing that year just because they would have played what might be 1, 2, even 3 games. They would be risking an entire season if the ruling doesn't go in their favor a couple of weeks from now.
So does it? Here's why I'm having a hard time, because right now they're sitting out the year with that rule. So if they play in a game or two right now, Davey, then they can't come back for 2 years? Does that add a year to it? Or did they just wipe away those 2 games they played and they're still coming back next year and it doesn't really matter? They just got a couple bonus games. Because to me, it would then start the clock after another season. So now the basketball player can't play the remainder of 2023-2024 or 2024-2025, making them a law school grad by the time they could play again.
It's true. And I mean, we could see, again, the COVID year is going to be going away here soon, but the amount of time these kids have been able to stay in school, they probably could have gotten their JD, could have gone, some of them get their MBA. But essentially, it just kind of comes down to this ruling, Chad. I think I'm understanding your question correctly in the fact that if the ruling is you cannot
be
because even though this judge in West Virginia
after the 2-week restraining order, if they come back and say what the NCAA has done is lawful and you have to sit out that year, then they lose another year.
You will just lose the 1 year. You won't gain. There's not another year that's added on after the fact.
All right, but then so there's no loss at all to these guys who are playing if they just do it in the 2-week window.
Because then they still come back next season. Same. But they can.
But if it does, you're not. I don't think you're answering my question.
Okay.
If it doesn't stay the same,
yes.
If they play in this 2-week window,
they'll just continue playing the rest of the season.
So
that would make sense.
After the 2-week window, okay. So then they'll just be ineligible next year.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So they'll have to serve that year regardless. Okay, I got you. So regardless if it's in sequence or not, they have to serve that 1 year. Either way, if it comes back and they say the NCAA is right, you're wrong with this deal.
That's my takeaway. I know we got really confused on this, but essentially it just comes down to what I think is going to happen. I don't think they risk playing the kid for these 2 weeks, because if you do that and then the rule comes back and says they're ineligible, then you're just losing an entire season for that kid. Whereas you could just hold off right now, not do anything and risk it. But then if they say, hey, we're going to remove, once the TRO is over with, we're going to let them play. At that point, they can finish out the rest of the season. Like Kelly mentioned, this is more for basketball students, winter sports.
I don't know that I'm any more settled on what this means or not. I still don't know. So they're just going to keep playing even if they come back and say, you got to sit out the year. Well, now we're going to play the rest of the year, and then we'll sit out next year. Okay. Either way, they're going to sit out a year unless they come back after this 2 weeks and say, oh, you can play now. All right. I think I know what's going on, but maybe not. Kelly, I have a hard time following the logic of lawmakers. I don't have a hard time following the logic. What they're doing is pandering to their constituency.
I was going to say, what do you mean? They're doing things for votes.
They're throwing things up against a dartboard, hoping that it sticks and they hit a bullseye so they can get votes the next time. But the latest, this is following up on Ashley Moody, the Florida district attorney, who is investigating or wanting to file an antitrust lawsuit against the College Football Playoff Committee for Florida State being left out. Now, Georgia State Senator Colton Moore has decided to basically try to force the College Football Playoff Committee to include the Orange Bowl matchup between Florida State and Georgia in the college football playoff. I'm sure they're probably going to win some votes for this, but this is also just the dumbest waste of time ever to issue a statement like this, clearly just to get the attention of showing that you're on the side of that state's favorite college football team. Am I right? Am I wrong on this?
Chad, that's all it ever is. It doesn't matter if it's Biden telling kids he's going to pay off their student loans and erase student loan debt. It doesn't matter.
You have no debt, and you have no debt, and you have no debt. No one has any debt.
So ridiculous at this point, right? I'm looking at Colton Moore's Twitter profile, right? X profile right now. Rhino Wrangler, Georgia Senator District 53, Georgia Freedom Caucus Vice Chairman. Guy's got 32,000 followers. I'd never heard of his name before right now. I'm going to go ahead and guess that he's trying to make this, just like every other politician, all about himself. And like you said, it's probably going to work. There's going to be next election cycle, some Georgia fans that are going to remember this and they're going to go, yeah, that was the guy. He had our back because he's throughout his whole letter, which mind you, he tagged Kirk Herbstreit, the SEC, the ACC, the NCAA, Governor DeSantis, Scott for Florida, Brian Kemp, GA, the governor of Georgia, ESPN, Feinbaum is even tagged in this tweet. I mean, this whole letter is hilarious because it's basically stating like, here's what you're getting from the SEC championship. If you take off the SEC championship, it's basically saying the Georgia Bulldogs won 29 straight games, the longest winning streak in 20 years in NCAA. And he's talking about how Kirby Smart won back-to-back national championships. All of these items as to why all they had to do was win the SEC championship game, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. And in fact, all Auburn had to do was make a defensive play on 4th and 31. I mean, we could go round and round and round and beat our heads against the wall, trying to say that some teams should have got in. Well, you know how you get in? You win your football games.
You're right about that. And look, we're doing exactly what this guy wants and talking about it and covering him. So I'll raise my hand and say I'm guilty of paying this attention. But I do like the actual post on X that he had. People of Georgia demand the NCAA and college football playoff include Orange Bowl in the college football playoff. Georgia versus Florida State. UGA is in the top 4 teams in the USA. And as you mentioned, everyone that he referenced and tagged in that. This guy is thinking, I'm going to ride this controversy about Georgia not getting in all the way to the governor's mansion. And, you know, maybe it works out for him. Maybe it doesn't. I do laugh, though. He mentioned Kirk Herbstreit. Kirk Herbstreit has gone the far extreme way now of just lighting Florida State on fire and saying, listen, Florida State fans, you're not good enough. Here's the bottom line. You're not as good as Texas, as Alabama, as Georgia, just going down the list. The only thing, and I think Kirk Herbstreit's very good at what he does, smart guy, good football guy. I'm just uncomfortable, Kelly, with the notion that Kirk Herbstreit needs to be the one to be the decider or anyone else of what Florida State will be in the playoff, right? I just want you to talk about what they accomplished throughout the season and if that's worthy of it, right? We can all sit here. You do it for a living, right, with what you do with sports betting. I get it. We can all sit here and try to make projections, but we really don't know. Like, Florida State had to overcome a lot, and they've got maybe the best defense in the country.
To play the game.
Thank you. And they've got the best defense in the country.
They got the best. You know, it's an absolute travesty. I would have loved to have seen Jordan Travis in there, Florida State in the football playoff, and then we could have really seen it. It is a real unfortunate event, but this happens to teams year in and year out, right? Not everybody has a good backup quarterback. And in fact, there was a really good shot that Florida State could have lost to Florida, and we wouldn't even have been having this conversation. And that's where it gets really difficult because we can play out these what ifs, these scenarios, but at the end of the day, you have to win your football games. I got Texas X very mad at me again today. I said in October, I said you guys deserved you'd be one of the 4 teams in the college football playoff. What did I do? Oh, I'm sorry. I bet against you when Malik Murphy was your quarterback for 3 weeks in a row. Okay, it is what it is, but they still won their football games. Outside of that Oklahoma game, which is a big-time rivalry game, and we bailed out the SEC for years saying, well, that early loss doesn't hurt. They bailed out Alabama with it again because Alabama won the SEC championship game. I am a little indifferent here with Barrett. I actually am probably the only person on the planet that likes Michigan, but one could argue Alabama from that USF game to that SEC championship game is a completely different team.
No, they are. And Michigan's favored still, right? So you're not the only one who feels that way, but it
the
does feel
bookmakers are
like
taking Bama bets hand over fist. Don't let them convince you otherwise.
And also, I feel like every analyst that covers the sport believes it's going to be Alabama, Texas for the national championship, and not the 1 and 2 seeds in this playoff. So I do agree with you there. Are you getting a lot of hook'ems right now? You know, how do you like us now, Kelly? Because you bet against them in the middle of the season with a backup quarterback. Is that why people are mad?
Fans, including myself, I've went on a couple of rants on this show over the past couple of weeks. Fandom makes you do crazy things. I do not hate any team. I might hate them on Saturday evening if they didn't cover or went outright for me, or they lose on a crazy pick 6. That might get me angry for the week. But then we move on, and I digress, and I'm on to another team that I'm betting against or betting on for the following week. That's the life of a sports bettor. You got to have a short-term memory.
I thought you had moved on from the K-State stuff, and then I saw you post something last night, reposting someone else, and I was like,
I'm not moved on.
Kelly's back. I was excited. Like, this is the passion I want to see. She's right back in the mix. She's ready to fight people. That's exactly what we want. Hey, Nebraska's ready to fight some people. First time maybe in a decade. First time since Bo Pelini. They're ready to fight. They're ready to win right now. They're doing whatever it takes, pulling out all the stops. Sean Callahan from Husker Online with the On3 Network will join us next to discuss.
So in 2019, Sean McDermott, talking to his team in training camp, gave a really stupid analogy. I mean, really stupid. He was talking about 9/11. He was talking about how well coordinated the attackers on our country were. And he was trying to make a reference about communication. He was trying to make a reference that these folks communicated well to one another. It's totally idiotic. I mean, I don't give a damn whether they communicated well. I don't give a damn whether or not they synchronized. I don't care. They were criminals, terrorists, at that got the absolute, well, they're the absolute worst of the worst. And I get a little fired up and I stumble over my words. I actually had stuff written down for this, but here's the thing. You got to understand when you're speaking in public, I don't give a damn if you're trying to make a cute analogy. You never use Hitler. You never use 9/11 terrorists. They are the worst of the worst, period. There's nothing good about them. I don't care. You know, how many times have we heard people talk about Hitler and say, yeah, but no, there's no yeah, but. When you do what these folks did to people and families, our country, other countries, you simply never praise them ever. You're not being clever. You're not being smart. You're not making a great analogy. You're being an insensitive clown. And I never use the word insensitive. I don't. I honestly don't. Insensitive to me is meaningless. Let me change that. You're being just a moron. Don't do it. It's not smart. It's not clever. It's not, well, look at how he. No. Horrible human beings. You never reference John Wayne Gacy or Dahmer or Manson. Never. In no way, shape, or form. Now, having said that, hey, how about we get over ourselves? How about we get over what happened 5 years ago, 4 years ago? And here's the deal in sports, and I've told you this before, okay? There's always the list. And when things go bad, here comes the list. So all of a sudden now, the Buffalo Bills are struggling. All of a sudden now, Sean McDermott's leadership is being called into question. And all of a sudden now, something that McDermott has apologized for, both in front of the team and to his bosses, for out. Now, that's ridiculous. Look, we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to do stupid things. At least that's what the preacher tells me on Sunday. At least that's what when somebody in church, Traders Point Christian Church, says, hey, look, if you've sinned, raise your hand. And everybody raises their hand and the preacher says, yeah, I did too. We're all sinners. And we all demand forgiveness, except when it comes time to actually forgive and forget. We never do that. We just can't. We won't. We're so full of crap. We just are. And you can act and say like we aren't, but we are. Who here hasn't sinned? Cast the first stone and all that stuff. Oh, yeah, we're all sinners. Boy, when somebody does, particularly in sports, particularly when they're losing, we can't wait to jump on them.
We're back. Hot mic across the OutKick network. Chad Withrow in studio. Downtown Nashville, 6th and Peabody studio with Old Smoky Moonshine and Yeehaw Beer. Jonathan Hutton's going to be back on Monday. Kelly Stewart doing a fantastic job filling in for him. In the meantime, joined us yesterday, joining us today as well. And I think back next Friday, actually. Excuse me. And now we are joined by someone from kind of Kelly's neck of the woods. She's from Kansas. Sean Callahan is in Lincoln, Nebraska, covering the Nebraska Cornhuskers for the On3 Network, Husker Online. Sean on with us right now. Sean, busy time to be someone on that Nebraska beat with everything going on. How you doing?
It's great to be on, guys. Happy Friday to you guys. And, you know, we joke this is the off-season capital of the world. Nebraska hasn't won a lot of games during the regular season, but they kind of find a way every year to make it interesting in the off season. And this week we all thought it was Kyle McCord. You know, he's here in town on his visit. And then out of nowhere, Dylan Raiola kind of shows back up in the picture. I used the analogy. It was kind of like Kyle McCord was in town to get married. He had the wedding all lined up. And then Dylan Raiola was the girl you've been chasing for 4 years that all of a sudden showed up to town and said, wait a minute, I want to marry you now. And it really has pivoted the quarterback conversation at Nebraska. Dylan Raiola did get into Nebraska this weekend. He got in today. So he's a household name in Nebraska, and obviously his father played here. His uncle is the offensive line coach. So there's a lot of angles here at Dylan Raiola in Nebraska.
Yeah, runaway bride for sure for this past weekend. Your audio sounds terrific, by the way. Big fan of good audio, and you sound great. Just wanted to point that out. With Raiola, right, we know about the family allegiances to Nebraska and the tie-ins there. So that part of it does make sense. He committed to Georgia a while back, and that was a big story when it happened. Did Matt Rhule and his staff ever stop? What has been the pursuit for this Nebraska staff with Raiola even after he committed to Georgia?
Well, the pursuit has been his uncle. His uncle, Donovan Raiola, was hired by Scott Frost. And, you know, in the back of everyone's mind, they're like, all right, this is going to be a natural in with Dominic Raiola and Dylan Raiola. You have Donovan Raiola as the offensive line coach. Only one coach was retained by Matt Rhule from the Scott Frost coaching staff, and it was Donovan Raiola. Donovan Raiola, his group played really well this year. They had an improved season. The guys got better. He got a new contract raise, $175,000 raise this year after the way his guys played. And the Raiolas were in town for a game. They came for the Michigan game back on September 29th, but nobody really thought much of it because they've been coming as a family to see Donovan, and you go, this is another Donovan visit. But I think in the back of their mind, they still always loved Nebraska. They wanted it to work with Nebraska, but no Nebraska fan was ever going to question him committing first to Ohio State or Georgia because of their history with the quarterback position and where those programs are at. But I just think a few factors have kind of worked into Nebraska's favor, and possibly the opportunity to start here as a true freshman is now out there for Dylan Raiola.
So, Sean, looking at the quarterback situation, if Raiola is in fact in with Nebraska, is it a no-brainer that he is the perceived starter in year one as a freshman? We know about the quarterback troubles this past year, or is there someone else that could possibly start for this team?
Well, Chubba Purdy is here, and that's the brother of Brock Purdy, and he came on late, played 3 games, and that was the best the offense probably looked all season. Jeff Sims is in the portal, and, you know, that was wild. When you think about Jeff Sims, he came here as the anointed guy from the portal a year ago. I mean, he had a fast food restaurant that gave him his own combo meal. It was the Jeff Sims combo. It came with a soft taco and a crisp meat burrito, and that lasted for a few weeks. And he had a tractor deal with John Deere and all these major NIL deals. They brought him to Big Ten Media Days, and it just did not work. Jeff Sims failed, so they had to go to an in-state guy named Heinrich Harburg, and he won 5 games as a starter, but was limited as a thrower. The offense was limited with him in there, but he still figured out a way to win 5 games. Then he got nicked up, and that's when Chubba Purdy got his opportunity, but could not win or close the deal against Maryland, Iowa, and Wisconsin. Purdy and Harburg are going to be here still, more than likely. And then they will bring in potentially another freshman, Daniel Kaelin, who was an Elite 11 quarterback. And this poor kid has had to play bridesmaid to Dylan Raiola from the beginning. They offered Daniel Kaelin way back as a freshman. Then Dylan Raiola showed up to camp, and they offered him. And then Dylan Raiola became their number 1 target. Daniel Kaelin, a local guy, commits to Missouri. decommits from Missouri when Dylan Raiola picks Georgia. Well, now Dylan Raiola is back in the picture for Nebraska. Daniel Kaelin is at Michigan State this weekend, visiting East Lansing and the Spartans. So definitely a lot of moving parts with the quarterback room and what it could possibly look like here in January.
That's pretty funny.
Sean
sorry,
Callahan
Chad,
is with, no, you're good. Sean Callahan with On3 Husker Online. You can follow him on X at Sean_Callahan. Kelly, go away.
Yeah, we laughed earlier in a segment about how much I supposedly hated Texas. People don't realize Nebraska is the only team I ever hated as a K-State kid. Hello. No, all jokes aside, excited to see what Matt Rhule's able to do in his second year in Nebraska. Kind of what are you hearing out of Lincoln? Are fans happy with them? You know, I have a lot of Nebraska fans that I would call good friends that are just kind of down in the dumps, right? They need some positivity. It's been pretty much a rough stretch since Bo Pelini left, and even before then, since the retirement of Tom Osborne. Kind of give them something positive to look forward to next year.
Well, Dylan Raiola, I mean, I think after the way the season ended at 5-7, you're like, man, how are they going to sell this offseason? How are they going to raise money for NIL? How is Trev Alberts going to possibly raise the money he needs for a $450 million stadium project? Because of the way the year ended. And by the way, the Big Ten adds 4 really good teams next year, and the Big Ten West is gone. So there was a lot there, but I think just the momentum of Dylan Raiola and the fact that so many players are going to come back off this team. They are going to lose a few guys, but a bulk of the guys that had decisions to make because of the COVID year are going to return. And you look at the schedule, guys, look at the first 7 games of Nebraska's 2024 schedule. It's a manageable way to start out. Compared to this year, they had to open up on the road, back-to-back games at night on national television at Minnesota, then big noon kickoff for Deion Sanders' first home game. So I do think it sets up a little bit better for Nebraska out of the gates. They've had to open with a Power 5 road game every single year since 2020, I believe. So it will be nice for Nebraska to finally open up with a more manageable schedule to kind of build a team with versus starting out 0-1, 0-2. And a place like Nebraska, when you start 0-1, 0-2, the alarm bells kind of get going right away. And you know, there's just a big spotlight on this program, as you know, being from Kansas.
I do. And there's a big spotlight here just north of where I'm currently residing. And that is on the Nebraska Cornhuskers volleyball team. Yeah. I made the joke about Texas, and that's who they're actually facing tonight. They're a slight favorite, about -160. I know maybe gambling is a match tonight, and maybe even a little bit with Huskers, -1.5 sets. My Kansas State Wildcats did sweep Texas. I think Nebraska can do the same tonight.
Yeah, it's actually Sunday. They'll play 2:00 on ABC, national televised game, but huge game. And I like the matchup for Nebraska. Wisconsin was the one that all Husker fans feared. They've had John Cook's number. They've only beat him one time over the last few years. Texas is just a better matchup. It's a newer matchup. Nebraska's loaded. I mean, they don't have a single senior on that team, and they return a lot of these girls will come back obviously next year. And John Cook, I mean, he's the Coach K of college volleyball. I mean, he is just a master of building teams, building chemistry. They've got a freshman named Harper Murray who is just outstanding, and what she's brought in. A lot of great veteran players. Funny enough, one of Texas's better back row players is Kinale Akana, and she was a Husker, but she had to leave Nebraska because of the COVID scholarship numbers, and they were going to give her an NIL type scholarship. She didn't like that. Transferred to Texas. Her brother's a linebacker at Texas, but there's a little bit of kind of crossover between these two rosters because of one of their former better players now plays for Texas, and they'll match up on Sunday.
Well, how much of Matt Rhule and the challenge he's facing, Sean, and I'm married to a Nebraska fan who's from Nebraska, and we talk about this all the time. Getting that team to believe they can win and to understand how to win. Because how many times over the years has Nebraska found interesting and complex ways to lose football games late?
All right.
It feels like every coach inherits that, and I can't quite put my finger on it as to how that happens.
Where's your wife from, by the way?
She is from Tilden, just outside of Norfolk, Nebraska. Yep.
Okay. Northeast Nebraska. All right.
Yeah, Northeast.
You talk about learning how to win, and that's you're right. I mean, this is a roster of a lot of guys that have been close. You go back to 2021. They had a great Michigan team on the ropes They had the ball to beat Michigan in the last few minutes of the game. They fumbled the ball in that game. And I mean, they've had a lot of games like that where they played Ohio State tight before. I mean, they've played Iowa tight several times. They played Wisconsin tight. And just that killer edge that get to finish out a game. I think it starts with the quarterback play. They need to have the right guy at quarterback to execute and make those plays down the stretch. Matt Rhule got them pretty close this year. I mean, this was a 5-win team that probably should have won 7 or 8 games. You look at three of their losses, 4 of their losses, they all could have gone Nebraska's way. They had 3 losses this year, guys, by a score of 13-10. All of them were losses off last-second field goals. So they are that close, and they've got the schedule again, at least for the first 7 games of the year, to build up some momentum before they take on teams like UCLA, USC, Ohio State, Iowa, et cetera, down the stretch.
Is the thought also that by landing Raiola, he's going to start recruiting himself, basically, the way he was with that Georgia class, that you get a quarterback to that level and suddenly recruits will follow, transfers will follow? Is that the hope for this Nebraska program?
Yeah, I don't know if they can do a lot for 2024. As you know, a lot of the hay is in the barn. The dead period starts Sunday. Prospects will sign on Wednesday. But with that said, I mean, there's definitely been a few visitors like Dylan Williams, a top 100 level linebacker from Long Beach Poly. He's committed to Oregon. He's in Lincoln now this weekend. And I don't know if Dylan Raiola affected that, but the Raiola's wave a big stick. They have a lot of reach, and Dylan Raiola's Rolodex is very deep. So I think that is something, at least for the next year or two, they will capitalize on. And like I said, I don't know if it'll be for the 2024 class, but I think for 2025, you might see that Raiola, if they get Raiola, let's assume they get him first, have some impact in future recruiting.
What is the Nebraska perspective on the additions to the Big Ten? Now that Nebraska was sort of, in no man's land for a while geographically within the conference, now you've got 4 teams coming in from the West Coast also. How does Nebraska view those teams entering the conference?
I think most fans are really excited. I've been to games in all 4 of those venues with Nebraska, at Oregon, at Washington, and then USC and UCLA. And every one of those games Nebraska's played out there, they've traveled 25,000 or more fans. So those are places Nebraska fans love to travel to. And I'll be honest, some of these places in the Big Ten, they're not exactly great travel destinations. It's hard to get to West Lafayette. It's hard to get to Champaign. It's hard even to get to Madison. You got to drive. So I think there's a lot of excitement for Nebraska fans to make a West Coast trip. Like, I look at the schedule, I believe it's November 16th. They're at USC. I'm like, great. Pack the shorts and go to California in late November. It will be a nice trip to get out there for a lot of Nebraska fans. And by the way, UCLA comes to Lincoln in November. So it will be interesting to see how some of these teams adapt to the weather, because the month of November, it can be 80 degrees, 70 degrees. It could be 20 degrees in this league. You don't know what you're going to get. And for some of these new teams, like the California schools particularly, the weather could be a real X factor.
Got about a minute left. What exactly is the expectation for Fred Hoiberg in Nebraska basketball this season?
Well, they play Kansas State, by the way, on Sunday in Bramlage, and the Huskers are 8-2. Creighton just handed it to them. That was a tough loss. The Minnesota game then was their next game. They had a 17-point lead on the Gophers at halftime. They blew it. And, you kind of wonder, man, what's going to happen? They bounced back. They beat Michigan State. I think that has kind of salvaged and turned their season. And for Michigan State, they're in a really tough spot now where Tom Izzo's team's at. But I think that win over Michigan State has kind of restored some life, where if this game in Bramlage, they're probably a slight underdog heading into Sunday's matchup, which, by the way, is on the exact same time as the volleyball game at 2. So it's going to be hard for a lot of Nebraska fans to watch both those games. But that's kind of a game. If they get that one, they're going to be in really good shape heading into Big Ten conference play. They haven't had a record this good heading into the Big Ten in a number of years.
Sean Callahan with On3, the network with Husker Online, the website, does a great job covering all things Nebraska Cornhuskers up there in Lincoln. Sean, really appreciate the time. Thanks for hopping on with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely. Sean Callahan. Busy time to cover the Nebraska beat. And if they can get Dylan Raiola as the number 1 quarterback in the country, 5-star guy, other players will follow eventually.
Oh,
as Sean
absolutely.
said, maybe not now, Kelly, but eventually those players will follow, transfer portal or recruit. So exciting time if you're a Nebraska fan. They've been through a lot a lot of close losses, a lot of losing seasons, have not played in a bowl game since they played in the Music City Bowl at the end of the 2016 season. That's how long it's been since they've gone bowling at Nebraska. Crazy, crazy time to be a Husker fan. Crazy, crazy experience playing for your country and playing soccer for a living, according to Megan Rapinoe. We'll react to her comments when we come back. This is Hot Mic across the OutKick Network.
It depends on certain things, but I feel like now it's like a teammate. Like, that should be your partner, your teammate. Like, I'm not cleaning all the house all the time because I'm not your mom.
I agree. We're double income, no kids, so I really like a partnership, but I don't want to take the trash out.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to do that.
She takes the kids, I provide. Very traditional.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you think that more young people should do that?
Yes, very much so.
What is it about like a motherly quality that you like?
It's worked for thousands of years and it still works today.
I like being girly. I'm a girl and I like being girly, so I like traditional to girls.
Okay, well, according to the 7 Hermetic principles, one of those being the law of gender, or to say gender manifests on all levels, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, all levels. Throughout the cosmos, there's gender. I don't know, it's a light. It's a book I read called The Supreme Way of Men or Women or something like that, and it spoke on how whether it's 2 women or 2 men, there still has to be someone who's masculine, someone who's feminine.
What would you spend on an engagement ring?
I'm not an engagement ring type of person. But if she wanted a ring, I'd probably spend like 20 on it.
20 what?
1,000.
20,000. That's a lot of money.
Hey, and shit.
You don't get that lady a real answer.
No, for real. Ain't it how much she make though?
Price, I didn't really care. Size, absolutely. Had to be big enough it could be seen, and I didn't want like a basic ring. I wanted like eclectic, like vintage looking.
Okay.
So we did a custom order to do my ring.
I didn't have a preference. I just had a gold preference, and he kind of took it from there.
And you trusted him. Did he crush it?
Oh, yeah, he crushed it.
I've been spoiled thus far, and so I don't think I could ever go back from what I received last time.
Okay, so high standards. That's good. What are the standards?
Okay, it was 5 carats.
Okay.
And it was beautiful.
Mine was way too expensive,
What's way too expensive?
like $45,000.
Okay. You probably went with a real diamond.
Very much so, yeah.
Do you think that that's kind of a flex for the guy? Like, is the engagement ring, is the engagement ring only for the girl, or do you get to watch other people look at your girl's ring?
Solely for the girl. Solely for the girl.
You don't get any enjoyment?
Couldn't care less.
Red flags in dating, because obviously you found each other. Did you have any icks that you overlooked, or is he perfect?
No, he's perfect. We had a nice night out at the bar. Fought over a toy shark, and that's how it all got started.
What don't you like? Red flags.
Cheating, lying, stuff like that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What are you looking for in a woman?
Honesty, respect, in love for herself.
Some green flags are loyalty and trustworthy. Red flags are seeking attention from other women.
Jealousy, probably biggest thing, especially being around other girls all the time and having other girlfriends. That would be the number one thing, is jealousy.
Red flag is they're on their phone too much. Green flag is they're on their phone a lot with you.
Well, look for loyalty. That's it. I'm 24, so it's hard to come across that like when you're young. So that's really all I look for, really, honestly.
What were deal breakers?
If she was broke, I know that sounds crazy, but for real, if she was broke, cause like it's like, yeah, like I don't want to take care of a motherfucker. Like I want to equal.
We're back, and I feel like we're going to have a hell of a time in this segment. And I can already feel it. There's tension right now. Both Kelly, Stewart, and I are ready to react to what Megan Rapinoe had to say. I'm Chad Withrow. Hutton will be back on Monday. This is Hot Mic across the OutKick Network. So Megan Rapinoe, everyone's favorite U.S. women's national team player, she had some things to say about how she feels like playing soccer for her country is the worst job in the world. And playing for the U.S. women's national team is the worst job in the world. I don't want to misquote. All right, I don't want to paraphrase here. I want to get this right before we respond to it with what Megan had to say. The headline, and now my computer is frozen. The headline from OutKick is Megan Rapinoe says playing for U.S. women's national team is worst job in the world, perfectly represents the loser mentality creeping into American culture. Story written by Mark Harris, friend of ours, been a guest on this show. Quote from Rapinoe, and this is in the new Netflix documentary series, Under Pressure, the U.S. Women's World Cup team. Quote, I always say it's the worst job in the world because if you do your job, then you were supposed to. And if you do one hair less, then you are going to get lambasted for it, Rapinoe said. Let me say this. First off, to say that playing a sport for a living is the worst job in the world is utterly ridiculous and completely lacks self-awareness for what a lot of people, men and women both, have to do for a living, okay? Second part, that's every job, Megan. If you do your job, you move on to the next day. You move on to the next show. You move on to the next shift. No one is patting you on the back. No one's throwing a party for you. You just get to keep doing the job. And when you don't do your job, you get lambasted over it. This is not unique to you. You're not special. This is everyone who works in America. When you don't do your job, you're criticized for it. And I hate to break it to you, but when you do, you're not being told, good job, way to go. You get to go do the job again the next day, and you did your job that day, and you can go drink a beer, drink a bourbon, drink whatever you wanted that night to celebrate the job you did that day personally. That's how you work. That's what you do. Kelly, this is just another example to me of Megan Rapinoe being very much out of touch with reality in a lot of ways.
She's been out of touch for a very long time, probably at least the last 7 or 8 years. That being said, I have a couple of questions. One, why are we still giving this woman the attention she so desperately seeks? I would love to just opt out of the segment and say, you know what? I'm going to take an extra long commercial break because I do not want to give this person 1 ounce of my power and in terms of my emotions. But then on the flip side, Chad, you nailed it. Did her mom not tell her how proud she was of her as a little girl enough? Does she need all of America to somehow, like you said, tell her every single day how great she is? I really don't understand the arrogance. I don't understand the attitude. I get to do every single day for a living something that I love. And oh, by the way, I get paid for it. Somebody wants to give me money to do something that I love. Megan, I'm going to go ahead and guess you love soccer at some point in time. And you got paid probably more, in fact, than you probably deserved for it. So let's just say what it is. Like, just if you need attention, just say something else. There's way more outlandish things you could say for attention.
Well, and look, the fight for equal pay that they won, mission accomplished with that. I was on her side and the U.S. women's national team side on the one issue of look at our success versus the men's success. Right? If you just want to do it as, hey, it's a meritocracy here in this country. We're winning World Cups, and they're not even competing at the highest level of the World Cup. Now, it doesn't quite work that way. It's about revenue generation and all these things. We know that. Ticket sales, eyeballs, jerseys, watching the games, jerseys, everything. All those things. And the men's game makes a lot more money, so that's why the pay was unequal. But me trying to be a fair person, like, I'm willing to hear that out. I listen to that argument and say, they're making a good point there. They do win a lot more than the men. They probably should be rewarded for that. And even if it's not just as much as the men, they should probably make more because they're successful. But in equal parts, I'm all for equality here. If you're going to make that argument and I'm going to listen to you and agree with it, I certainly have the right to also criticize you when you're not winning World Cups and when you're losing to nations you shouldn't lose to, like in this past World Cup. You can't have it both ways. So if you're going to argue that, then should America take money away from you when you don't do what you're supposed to do as the American women's? You had a head start with women's soccer in America, okay? This is not like the U.S. men that are way behind Europe and South America and the rest of the world when it comes to soccer for generations. Women and young girls got more opportunity in the United States to play sports. You got a big head start, and you won World Cups with that head start. When you let the rest of the world catch you and you lose to countries you shouldn't lose to, you deserve to be criticized, period. Am I wrong?
I don't think you're wrong. Listen, you nailed it when you said you can't speak out of both sides of your mouth, and you got to take the good with the bad. I mean, they were sizable favorites in that game. I mean, the underdog, I think, was plus 1,100. I mean, that means you put down a $1,000 bet, you're getting back 11 grand. That's not a small, you're not a small favorite here, coin flip type of game. You were expected to win that football game. And maybe they didn't because of distractions. Maybe they didn't because of arrogance. I don't understand this. I think if we just stop talking about some of these insufferable athletes, maybe they won't get the endorsements that they get. Maybe we won't have to hear their new Netflix special. I don't know, Chad. I have gotten to the point where I have personally tuned out their noise because I cannot bother to give them another ounce of attention that they so desperately seek.
Allie on the YouTube chat agrees with you, Kelly. She says, I can't wait until Rapinoe is gone so people can stop acting like she's the only female soccer player in America and that somehow she's the mouthpiece of America. I will agree with that, and that's a point well made. And I've long said this. I try not to say, well, every woman on the U.S. women's national team is just like Megan Rapinoe. They're not. There are plenty of them that are proud to be Americans, that love their job, that are just trying to do their best, are competitive and trying to win. I don't want to lump the whole team in with her, so I want to be respectful and make sure that we're not doing that. So that's a point well made, Kelly. And look, now that she's no longer a part of the team, hopefully, once everybody watches this documentary and that's over with, then we start to kind of turn the page on that part of it. Well said. And I'm going to miss Allie, and I'm going to miss the chat on YouTube also. So well said, Allie. Davey Hudson is here, and Davey has got Pick Your Poison for us. This is, Kelly, if you've not played before, a list of awful decisions, and we're going to have to make a choice based on the awful decision and the choices given to us by one Davey.
That we are. I would also like to add from the previous conversation, I am looking forward to 2026. Chad, you were talking about how we put the assets in women's soccer, and people are always like, why isn't the men's team better? But the world will figure that out whenever the Olympics implements flag football. I mean, I'm just waiting for Tyreek Hill versus the Lithuanian plumber, and then they'll see why we've not been putting all our eggs in the basket of being good at soccer.
Imagine how embarrassing it's going to be when the Lithuanian plumber beats Tyreek Hill at some point. Or, 20 years from now, the rest of the world catches up in flag football.
That's not going to happen.
Well, it's flag football. I don't.
It's flag football, and Tyreek Hill is the fastest player in the NFL. If there was somebody that was as fast, I mean, there's a reason why Usain Bolt is not a wide receiver in the NFL. It's because you got to be able to take the hits.
You're being an arrogant American right now, Kelly, because I thought this about basketball for years, and then I see where our Olympic basketball team can't even get into a medal round at times or can't win a gold medal.
You just need to get a coach.
We spoke about this yesterday. There's a ton of Europeans. There's a lot of Australians, New Zealanders coming into the mix to play in the NBA. But flag football, come on. None of these other countries play football.
Let me give a counter argument to what you're saying. It's flag football, not American tackle football. If this was American tackle football, I would absolutely agree with you. It would be a generation or two before any country could even compete with Americans at American football, no doubt. But there is going to be a nation that does nothing but this year-round, every single day. And we are going to put NFL players in a position where they're not playing tackle football, which they are paid millions to play, and we are going to get our ass beat by someone who does it every single day
all they have to do is
and knows the flag game better. They're better at grabbing flags because they do it all the time.
We're not tackling anymore anyway.
I'm telling you,
Davey.
We're going to have to employ flag-only players at some point. They're going to be good athletes, but that's how we're going to compete with the world. You heard it here first. It's not the same as playing tackle football.
What's the over-under on how many years? 25?
Look, I think if another country goes all in on this and gets really good athletes to only do flag football, and we're putting our NFL stars,
which country?
It could be 10 years where they do it.
I'm thinking of a country that better have some really stud athletes.
Brazil.
Really fast.
I mean, it could be a lot of different countries that you could just get. I mean, take these
why
population
would Brazil go
centers.
all in on flag football when they have soccer?
Because they want to beat America. That's why. That is why. Someone's going to go all in on it and be better at flag football than us.
And that's fair. And God bless them for trying. This
is going to be a longer topic we'll have at some point when we're getting ready for it. But I see possible problems if we're playing tackle football than putting our tackle football players in flag, and there's someone who just does flag football all the time. And it's going to look weird when they get out there and they're not used to that game. Anyway, Davey, go ahead with the first question.
Certainly. So, actually, keeping in line with the NFL, somebody named Brandon Staley, who somehow has had a job for a long time, no longer has that job as the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. And it made me thinking, what are the worst ways to get fired if you're an NFL coach? And so your options for today on Pick Your Poison, you get left on a tarmac, a la Lane Kiffin. You just get fired on the field in front of all the fans. You don't, obviously the fans aren't hearing that conversation, but they know what's happening. And then the third option is you get fired in front of your team in the locker room, just in front of all of them to hear that conversation.
Kelly, you go ahead.
Yeah, Davey, I have to ask, how come being announced on social media before you found out in real life
that's a good one.
Hasn't happened yet? Because we've seen it between like players finding out that they're getting traded and they're going, wait, what? I haven't even heard from my agent or a coach yet. I'm surprised we haven't had a coach get found out on social media that he's been fired before the other things. But if I have to pick between your three, I think getting fired on the tarmac has got to really suck. I mean, you're like, how do I get home? Am I allowed back on the plane? Do I have to go take a commercial flight? How does this work? Do I need to charter a jet home? I mean, that to me would be probably the worst option. You get fired on the field. Like you said, nobody really hears it, but they kind of have an idea. It's pretty embarrassing. In the locker room, maybe if your players are maybe cheering for your firing or very quiet, that would also be very uncomfortable. But being left on the tarmac, man, that's gotta be tough.
See, I would actually choose getting fired on the tarmac over the other ones. I think getting fired on the field, worse. Getting fired in front of your team or where they can hear it, worse. I like the idea of the tarmac because it's probably just me with the owner, and then I get to go just be by myself. Because Brandon Staley, for example.
Go be where, though? You're going to hang out in the airport?
I'm going to go rent a car.
By yourself?
Hear me out. If I'm in Vegas and I'm Brandon Staley, I'm going to rent a car, and I get to spend 4.5 hours by myself, talking to family or whoever, driving home, not having to face my team, not having to get on a plane and face the guys that just lost 63-21, knowing I'm going to get fired, and I get to contemplate my next move and process everything. I'd rather be fired on the tarmac.
So you're saying you wouldn't enjoy yourself? You wouldn't go buy yourself a nice steak dinner at midnight in Vegas and
I'd
just
sulk.
Go to the spa the next day?
Eventually, yes, but I'd probably sulk for a little while. I just wouldn't want to be around people. I'd want to be in a car by myself driving. So I'd like to get fired on the tarmac. Now, if you're across the country, Kelly, to your point, that's a different issue. I don't know that I'm going to rent a car and travel across the country via car.
Just for like 4 days by yourself, taking Route 66 all the way home.
That would not be ideal. But to me, it's just I wouldn't want to be around my team when it happened. So any option where I'm not around them is probably the better option for me. Davey,
I'm just thinking back. I know we're close on time. It's just I just remember, again, being a Tennessee fan, obviously there was that love-hate relationship with Lane Kiffin for a long time. And when Pat Haddon got him and fired, like got him off the plane, it's just like, you're done.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I would just want to be alone. Giannis Antetokounmpo really wanted a game ball. This is crazy. You thought Patrick Mahomes had an insane reaction to some bad officiating? Wait till you see Giannis when he didn't get that game ball. That's coming up next.
What would you spend on an engagement ring?
I'm not an engagement ring type of person. But if she wanted a ring, I'd probably spend like 20 on it.
20 what?
1,000.
$20,000. That's a lot of money.
Big and shit.
You don't get that lady a real answer.
No, for real. Ain't it how much you make though?
Price, I didn't really care. Size, absolutely. Had to be big enough it could be seen, and I didn't want like a basic ring. I wanted like eclectic, like vintage looking. Okay. So we did a custom order to do my ring.
I didn't have a preference. I just had a gold preference, and he kind of took it from there.
And you trusted him. Did he crush it?
Oh yeah, he crushed it.
I've been spoiled thus far, and so I don't think I could ever go back from what I received last time.
Okay, so high standards. That's good. What are the standards?
Okay, it was 5 carats.
Okay.
And it was beautiful.
Mine was way too expensive.
What's way too expensive?
Like $45,000.
Okay.
Wow.
You probably went with a real diamond.
Very much so, yeah.
Do you think that that's kind of a flex for the guy? Like, is the engagement ring, is the engagement ring only for the girl, or do you get to watch other people look at your girl's ring?
Solely for the girl. Solely for the girl.
You don't get any enjoyment?
Couldn't care less.
Do we think gender roles are a thing of the past, or we should bring them back?
I feel like it depends on certain things, but I feel like now it's like a teammate. Like that should be your partner, your teammate. Like I'm not cleaning all the house all the time because I'm not your mom.
I agree. We're double income, no kids, so I really like a partnership, but I don't want to take the trash out.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to do that.
She takes the kids, I provide. Very traditional.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you think that more young people should do that?
Yes. Very much so.
What is it about like a motherly quality that you like?
It's worked for thousands of years and it still works today.
I like being girly. I'm a girl and I like being girly, so I like traditional gender roles.
Okay, well, according to the 7 Hermetic principles, one of those being the law of gender, gender manifests on all levels, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, all levels. Throughout the cosmos, there's gender. I don't know, it's a lot. It's a book I read called The Supreme Way of Men or Women or something like that, and it spoke on how whether it's 2 women or 2 men, there still has to be someone who's masculine, someone who's feminine.
My friend, do you know what Riz means?
Yeah, Riz is like, it's like game. You know what game is? Like when you're trying.
I don't have any, but I know what it is.
It's like the new word for game. So meaning like you're able to speak well and get, a date kind of.
I do not.
Do you have any guess?
I could guess.
What do you think?
It's like, I don't know, razzle tassel. I don't know.
Kind of. Actually, you're not too far off. Charisma.
Riz, charisma. I've been able to talk someone up.
Did you read that online, or did you already know what that meant?
I'm on TikTok way too much.
Okay, another word that has become very popular this year. Do you know what mentee B means?
I don't know any of this stuff. I'm not on social media. I don't know any of it.
What about mentee B? Do people use the word mentee B in real life?
What is that?
You don't know mentee B?
I've never heard of mentee B.
A mental breakdown?
What?
Mentee B.
A mental breakdown.
Oh, you have a mentee B? I didn't know that. But I like that. I didn't know that, but I like that.
Mentee B, is that like that chocolate mint thing?
What does mentee B mean?
I have no idea. I don't know what that is. Mentee B, you ever heard?
You don't know mentee B?
I've never heard mentee B. Never in my life.
We're back. Hot mic across the OutKick network on this Friday from our 6th and Peabody studios downtown Nashville. I'm Chad Withrow. We got Kelly Stewart, guest co-hosting with us at Kelly in Vegas. Watch The Fade with Kelly and Clay Travis weekly as well as part of the OutKick network. Speaking of the OutKick network, a programming announcement for OutKick fans. Starting January 3rd, the only place to catch OutKick's original shows will be on the website. OutKick.com. You can catch up on YouTube after the show, but for all the live content, head and watch the show on the Watch tab, OutKick.com. Don't miss a second. In 2024, again, OutKick.com. Hit the Watch tab. You can watch any of the shows live from the website. People are bemoaning the fact that the chat is going away on YouTube right now. I'm taking shrapnel left and right from our viewers in the YouTube chat. I'm going to go ahead and make this announcement and just say it, and it will be so. I will find a way. If no one else does, I, myself, Chad Withrow, will find a way, with the help of the brilliant people in the studio right now, to interact with you, the viewers, whether it be, I don't even know, Colin said something about an AOL chat, a group me.
Why not on X or
X,
something like
yeah,
that? I mean, there's got to be capability
Tyler
to
mentioned
have a chat.
an X chat that you can make it private for the people watching also. That's a good one too, Kelly. We'll come up with something. I like the idea of a show text line that you can go to an app on the phone and just see it from your phone and constantly interact with people. We will come up with something. So for those that are on YouTube every day, and I know who you are, that are big fans of the show, first off, I appreciate you. I thank you. And I promise we will find a way for you to interact with the show. This is my Christmas holiday season promise to you. We will find a way. We will make it happen. Kelly Stewart has found a way the last couple of days also. Kelly, we have entered the final hour of 6 that you have hosted on this show. You still seem fresh as a daisy. You look ready. You've got energy. You're with it still. I'm very impressed with the stamina so far.
The stamina. Yeah, it's powered by energy drinks, coffee this morning. Look, it has been really fun, and I appreciate everybody hanging out with me and understanding that I've never done anything like this before.
Allie says in the chat, I believe it, from Chad, our fearless chat leader.
Oh, they love you.
Someone also put, the chat is the best thing about the show. And I wanted to respond and say, you switch the T with a D at the end of chat. The chat is the best part of the show. Let's get it right.
Have you told them that I'm going to be filling in for you when you take a vacation?
I'm sure when that happens,
they're going to lose it then.
Kelly will then be the best part of the show. Not the chat, me. It'll be Kelly's the best part of the show. Kelly, you could really score some points if you get a show text going for the week that I'm out and you're the one to implement it and just, take the bull by the horn. Don't do it, because then people will like you more than me, and no one wants that. Me especially. But we can find something for you can do for the audience. That's for sure. Fun time. It's been a good time hosting with you the last couple days. Really appreciate you stepping in for Hutton. Hutton's going to be back on Monday. I think Hutton's out again next Friday. Kelly's going to be on with me again next Friday. Always doing a great job. Kelly joins us every Friday right here on Hot Mic also for our betting segment for the weekend. We're going to have that in about 17 minutes. So we'll get Kelly's best bets for the weekend. I've got a pitch that I'm going to make to Kelly about what I'm going to bet. It's not football related, by the way. It is a sport she knows a lot about, college basketball. But that is going to be my pitch for the weekend coming up at 4:20 Central Time. I want to talk about Giannis, though. Kelly, I think you've seen this also. His outburst going after the game ball, after scoring 64 points, we're showing it right now, was unhinged, the best way I can describe this. I've never seen anything like this. He was really ticked off that some Pacers assistant walked away with the ball that he wanted as a memento from a very good performance.
It's tough, right? We bagged on Draymond yesterday, and that's probably because Draymond's very easy to not like, for lack of another description for him. And you know who I like a lot? I'm not going to say he's my favorite NBA player, but I love Giannis.
I do too.
I think he's got good passion. I think he's very exciting. And obviously he's a very good basketball player, but he also seems like a very good guy. Pretty much ever since the day that I watched him order a 50-piece after scoring 50, I'm like, who doesn't love Giannis? He just seems like such a nice guy. Watching this video, you're going, okay, maybe Giannis can, light that match. And maybe he felt like they were purposefully not allowing him to have the game ball because he scored 60 plus on the Pacers. And then he went on to say in the press conference that it's not the same ball. I touched that ball for X number of minutes. It's not it. I kind of have to wonder, does it really matter? I mean, of all the accolades that Giannis is going to have throughout his career, does this ball matter that much?
Well, and there's got to be a backstory. Like, my first thought was there's got to be some sort of history with the Pacers in that building, or with someone on staff, or something he's heard, or something that's taken place, because that is not a normal human reaction. It's certainly not a normal reaction for someone like Giannis that is always, I mean, he's comported himself very well as a pro, right? You like him, Kelly. I'm a big fan also. This is very un-Giannis-like, which makes me think it couldn't just pop up out of the blue. there had to have been something that's taken place over his career playing in Indianapolis that led to this, that we're not hearing the full story on. Because if it's just an assistant took the game ball and you're running through the concourse just bowling people over and doing that, that's not normal.
No, it's not. And it again, like you said, it's very un-Giannis-like. Maybe Giannis actually has a good PR team there in Milwaukee, because maybe that's why we've never seen the not so pretty side of Giannis. Or, as you said, maybe there's just more to the story. You know, sometimes those backstories, those hatreds of teams aren't widely publicized, right? We always knew the Bulls and the Pistons hated each other, but maybe the Bucks and the Pacers really hate each other. That would be something that would be new to me, but wouldn't be shocking whatsoever.
Kelly, I think you'd be good working in PR. You bring up PR in a way that I feel like you would know how to handle situations like this. Because if Giannis was always like this and we didn't know about it, and the Bucks PR team was behind, the group behind not showing us that is an impressive job by Bucks PR. A little bit better than the Louisville basketball story we discussed yesterday. Also not a good story, what took place in Jacksonville with the Jags organization, where an employee embezzled $22 million from the team, from the company. Probably no surprise. It turns out this employee had a bit of a gambling issue, and the biggest part of the issue was they're a terrible gambler. Terrible sports gambler was in part what led to this $22 million embezzlement. Kelly, I know that definitely doesn't surprise you.
It shouldn't surprise me. I mean, there's, of course, an ugly side to anything that you can become addicted to. But in fact, if you read the article that is posted on OutKick that was written by our good buddy Guns, he only lost $500,000 of that in gambling, okay? Where is the other $21.5 million? Okay, so he bought a Tesla. There's $100,000. But we're still missing a ton of money here. And what's more shocking to me is how in the world the Jacksonville Jaguars let this go on for so long. I mean, this went on for a significant period of time, just completely unnoticed. More than $20 million. I mean,
insane.
Was there more than just the fantasy bets that he was doing, right? He was buying in for $30,000 in daily fantasy. Maybe there was some casino involved there as well. I'm not really sure here, because there's not, outside of, okay, he bought a house, makes sense. He bought some designer clothes, fine. He bought another car outside of the Tesla, okay. But that is still not $22 million. Did he hide some of it offshore?
Could be. Could be in a Swiss account somewhere. There's a lot of options here. We've learned earlier, not a Seinfeld fan. Have you seen the movie Dumb and Dumber?
Of course I have.
Okay, so you're a fan.
Hey, there you go. We talked about Michael Fabiano, good friend of mine, Bobby Farrelly. So, of course,
wow,
I've seen
one of the Farrelly
Dumber.
brothers. That's incredible. A lot of good work from the Farrelly brothers.
Yes.
Dumb and Dumber, one of them. But there's a scene in Dumb and Dumber that I'm thinking about with this guy, where if you remember towards the end of it, they get the briefcase, the guy that they stole from, all the money. And Jim pops open the briefcase. Remember, there's not cash in it. It's all written out IOUs. And
Yes,
Jim Carrey picks up one off the ground and says, $200K. Might want to hold on to that one, and hands it back to him. That's what I see this guy doing after the gambling debt. And the $21.5 million left unaccounted for from him. Maybe he wrote out IOUs also and was just trying to hand it back to the Jags, saying, I got your back. I'll get it to you. Don't you worry about it.
Yeah, they're going to have to hand out some 1099-Cs for this tax year, because they're going to have to write off a lot of that debt that they're never going to see again.
No doubt. There's plenty of things to worry about, not just in sports, but a lot of different places. There's a dumpster fire every week. We've got our dumpster fires of the week right now. And I'll begin, and I don't know where the dumpster fire lies on this, whether it's the fact that the entertainment community, when they cover tabloid media and celebrities, their lack of information about how sports work with how they cover it when the two cross over, or if the dumpster fire is the fact that I still follow Entertainment Tonight on X, and I was able to see this post on X. But I'm going to show you the post right now on X from Entertainment Tonight, and this is about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. And the fact that Travis Kelce did not show up to Taylor Swift's birthday party. I think we have that post right now that we can show. Maybe not. I guess not. Either way, I'll paraphrase. what the post says. Basically, the post says something about, for those that are freaking out about Travis Kelce not going to Taylor Swift's party, he's not there because he's really intense about this. Here it is. Entertainment Tonight. Travis Kelce was noticeably absent during Taylor Swift's 34th birthday celebration in New York City, but for a good reason. A source, which hilarious, by the way, I'd love to know who the source is. Anyone could have said this. A source tells ET that he, quote, remains committed to playing his best and doing his best on and off the field. The team practices are critical, mandatory to attend, and something he takes very seriously. So it's no surprise he stayed in Kansas City ahead of this weekend's game. Yeah, duh. He's a professional football player in the NFL. He can't take off to jet set during the week of game prep with practices, meetings going on, and everything else to go to Tribeca to hang out with his celebrity girlfriend for her 34th birthday party. When sports and tabloid media intersect with celebrity culture and people that actually know the games and know sport, it is a dumpster fire every single time. It was a dumpster fire this week as well, and that is why it is my dumpster fire of the week. Kelly in Vegas now has the floor for her dumpster fire of the week.
I'm going to let Davey go next. I actually have a second one I'm following up on here right now on X. I may have to pivot.
Okay. Davey, go ahead.
No worries at all.
Davey with his beautiful yellow sweater. Davey, go ahead.
Folks, I am starting with where we started the show today, and that's the LA Chargers. You look at it, the Brandon Staley project, I don't know how he got his third year. I look at what he was able to do, or the lack of what he was able to do with the talent that he had, and it just continued to spiral out of control. You end up playing a game where you should at least be competitive against this Raiders team. When Aiden O'Connell is the other team's quarterback, you have an opportunity to win that game. It's the NFL. Any game or any given Sunday, I know this was Thursday, but you look at a Raiders team that was held to 0 points 4 days ago. 4 days ago, and yet they give up 63. And that's a team-high record for the Raiders in their entire history. Brandon Staley was fired, rightfully so, and I'm interested to see what they do now because you look at it, they have a star quarterback in this league, but they have failed to put him with a solid head coach since he has been into the NFL. And Anthony Lynn, train wreck, Brandon Staley, train wreck. So we'll see where they go from here, but they have plenty of opportunities to go out and hire a decent coach. But right now, I don't see them doing that, and so I'm sure the Chargers will be a dumpster fire here again before it's all said and done.
And was that also a franchise record, 42 points in the first half?
Had to be.
It was 42-0 at halftime. I think that was a franchise record for the Raiders.
I mean, they hit the over alone before half.
So bad overall. Kelly, you were going to pivot. You had one dumpster fire. Have you pivoted to another one?
Yeah, I do. Only because it's breaking news for my alma mater. And I know my dad's watching, and so he will want to hear this.
Hello,
Looks
Mr.
like
Stewart.
We just got a press conference out of Manhattan, Kansas. And as I stated, the dumpster fire that was the university president last week and overstepping his bounds, micromanaging, and so forth. The dumpster fire of the week, unfortunately, is going to be Kansas State University's president. I thought last week was bad. I thought what the KBOR, that would be the Kansas Board of Regents, was going to do this week was say, hey, man, we're not going to fire you. Just back off. Let the athletic director, let the basketball coach do their jobs. And guess what? Nope. New press conference just came out about 30 minutes ago. Jerome Tang, arguably one of the best things to ever happen to Manhattan, Kansas, as far as an athletic standpoint, and as far as a human standpoint. If you guys have not got to watch some of his messages, we spoke about Reggie White earlier on the show and some of his messaging. Jerome Tang, an absolutely awesome human being. The dumpster fire of the week is Richard Linton, president of Kansas State University.
So what was said in this press conference? Was it really bad? Kelly?
It wasn't really bad because Jerome Tang is not only a man of God, but a man of honor. And I think that he alluded to just enough to say, hey, listen, I have been micromanaged. I was told to put out a video. I was told to break up a protest that was in essentially Naquan Tomlin's honor. He didn't say these things because he, again, is one of those really nice guys. I would have loved for him to come out and said, you know what? He made me do this. This happened, and this happened. But it is really unfortunate because I think Kansas State is going to lose Jerome Tang. And it's probably going to be, Chad, to Louisville.
Yeah, Louisville's the rumor that's out there. Yeah, and it's a really good job in college
basketball. And when
basketball.
that happens, K-State basketball program will then be the dumpster fire of the week because no one will want this job. No one wants to be micromanaged in any capacity in their career. I think that great leaders, as I said last week, lead from the back. They put great people in positions to do their jobs, and they only step in when absolutely and utterly necessary. I think the university president is similar to the president of the United States. Go shake some hands and kiss some babies and stand up there and don't embarrass us. And apparently, we can't get that from either the president of the United States or the president of Kansas State.
Well said, Kelly. Kelly's betting segment coming up next.
So in 2019, Sean McDermott, talking to his team in training camp, gave a really stupid analogy. I mean, really stupid. He was talking about 9/11. He was talking about how well coordinated the attackers on our country were. And he was trying to make a reference about communication. He was trying to make a reference that these folks communicated well to one another. It's totally idiotic. I mean, I don't give a damn whether they communicated well. I don't give a damn whether or not they synchronized. I don't care. They were criminals, terrorists, at that got the absolute, well, they're the absolute worst of the worst. And I get a little fired up and I stumble over my words. I actually had stuff written down for this, but here's the thing. You got to understand when you're speaking in public, I don't give a damn if you're trying to make a cute analogy. You never use Hitler. You never use 9/11 terrorists. They are the worst of the worst, period. There's nothing good about them. I don't care. You know, how many times have we heard people talk about Hitler and say, yeah, but no, there's no yeah, but. When you do what these folks did to people and families, our country, other countries, you simply never praise them ever. You're not being clever. You're not being smart. You're not making a great analogy. You're being an insensitive clown. And I never use the word insensitive. I don't. I honestly don't. Insensitive to me is meaningless. Let me change that. You're being just a moron. Don't do it. It's not smart. It's not clever. It's not, well, look at how he. No. Horrible human beings. You never reference John Wayne Gacy or Dahmer or Manson. Never. In no way, shape, or form. Now, having said that, hey, how about we get over ourselves? How about we get over what happened 5 years ago, 4 years ago? And here's the deal in sports, and I've told you this before, okay? There's always the list. And when things go bad, here comes the list. So all of a sudden now, the Buffalo Bills are struggling. All of a sudden now, Sean McDermott's leadership is being called into question. And all of a sudden now, something that McDermott has apologized for, both in front of the team and to his bosses, 4 or 5 years later is being brought out. Now, that's ridiculous. Look, we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to do stupid things. At least that's what the preacher tells me on Sunday. At least that's what when somebody in church, Traders Point Christian Church, says, hey, look, if you've sinned, raise your hand. And everybody raises their hand and the preacher says, yeah, I did too. We're all sinners. And we all demand forgiveness, except when it comes time to actually forgive and forget. We never do that. We just can't. We won't. We're so full of crap. We just are. And you can act and say like we aren't, but we are. Who here hasn't sinned? Cast the first stone and all that stuff. Oh, yeah, we're all sinners. Boy, when somebody does, particularly in sports, particularly when they're losing, we can't wait to jump on them.
Welcome back. Hot mic across the OutKick Network. Chad Withrow with you, downtown Nashville, 6th and Peabody Studios. Kelly Stewart, fantastic work the end of this week, co-hosting the show. Hutton's going to be back with us on Monday. We wish him well. Well-deserved time off for Hut, and he'll be back with us Monday. Also, programming note, we mentioned it before, starting January 3rd, we will be on OutKick.com exclusively. So we'll be on YouTube, but after the show, for live content, go to OutKick.com starting January 3rd. Working on options for chats, for text lines, whatever it may be. We'll let you know about all of that once we have that information. And appreciate everyone watching on YouTube right now, listening on our network. However you're taking in the show, we appreciate you on this Friday. Kelly Stewart, Kelly in Vegas, catch her with Clay Travis on The Fade. Every Friday joins us anyways to give us her bets for the weekend. We're going to do that right now. But first, normally it's me and Hutton doing battle, giving our pitches to Kelly. She has to pick one or the other. I feel like it's kind of a pick your poison that we did with Davey, where she really hates both bets but has to pick one every week that Hutton and I do it. Kelly, do you feel the same way when we give you our pitches?
I do feel bad because I think what Hutton tries to do is not necessarily pick the game he likes the most, but he's like, okay, let me pick a less disgusting game that Kelly might hate less than Chad's, right? Just so that he can technically win. Because it's not like Hutton picks, some glamorous game that I'm going to fall in love with here.
Yeah, I pick with emotion, right? You believe that I believe in my pick, right? I really believe in this pick, okay? So you tell me what you think. College hoops, especially early in the season, there are some lines that smart bettors can take advantage of. LSU is playing at Texas tomorrow. LSU has lost to Nicholls State, Dayton, and they lost to Kelly's K-State Wildcats 75-60 recently. Texas is in the top 20. And they are only a 7.5-point favorite against LSU. I don't know how that is. I am hammering the horns on this one. -7.5. I think they win by double digits. I think they win easily against LSU. Kelly, do you agree with me?
Look, here's kind of the caveat with LSU. You mentioned that they just played my alma mater before that Alabama State game, and K-State let them hang around. And I go, what in the world? Why are we letting them hang around? Well, that was because LSU was relatively playing turnover-free basketball. Well, then the LSU that we saw that lost to Nicholls State and Dayton early in the year and got boat raced on the road at Syracuse, they came to play because they kept turning the ball over. I said the other issue that LSU has, they can't get boards. K-State's fifth player, Willie McNair, who sees the court more often than not, but he's not a full-time role player, had more boards in that game than he's ever had. So I would have to agree with you here. I don't think that I could trust LSU here. On a neutral court is the one caveat. So you guys got to pay attention to that. If it was in Austin, this would be a very low line. It would be very fishy. LSU is going to give their best effort to the better teams. Texas, by all means, is the better team here. They're very well balanced. Now, what they got to do is stop getting in foul trouble because they're giving up a ton of free throws. And as you know, those late free throws means the back door could be open. But I'm with you. It's Texas or pass.
Love it. Shows how much of a smart gambler I am that I thought the game was in Austin. It is on a neutral court. I still love the pick because Texas is going to roll them. Neutral court, Austin, doesn't matter. I think they win by double digits, so take the horns -7.5. Kelly, let's get into your best bets of the week, starting with the Bills. We know the Cowboys have been different home and away this year with their performances. They're going to Orchard Park to take on Buffalo, and you like the Bills in this one?
I do. When I did this, I went over this game with Clay Travis on the Fade this week. I said, hey, look, it looks like it's going to be nice weather, 30, 40 degrees. Orchard Park, though, no wind, no bad weather. Well, now you start to look and the tides have turned. It might be a little windy. It might be a little rainy. Guess what? The guys who play in the Dome don't like that stuff. You mentioned Dallas's home road dichotomy, 7-0 at home. That's 6-1 against the spread, but just 3-3 straight up and against the spread on the road. We already know it's tough to play on the road, right? But now if we're going to have freezing weather, rain, and wind, keep an eye on that one, though. I do think that this might be a closer game due to the Dallas Cowboys scoring offense. We know that they're number one. Dak deserves some credit here for being a game manager. I actually came over the top. I laid 2 with the Bills. I came back, took Dallas plus 8.5 in a teaser. Look, can we just get the Bills to win by, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 points? And I would be a very happy girl.
See, as a viewer and a fan, I love December football in the NFL when the weather gets bad. I mean, you get to watch some of those conditions. As a bettor, do you love it or hate it? Do you prefer your games when you're trying to bet on to be played in a 72-degree climate-controlled environment? Or do you like trying to play with weather forecast when you're making a bet?
Chad, if I wanted to be a meteorologist, I would have been. Because guess what? Trying to guess the weather at any point in time is worse than sports gambling. And maybe that will be my new career. I'd probably get a lot less hate on the internet if I just forecasted the weather wrong as opposed to sports gambling. No, of course, if you had a climate-controlled environment at all points in time, it'd be incredible. You wouldn't have to worry about dropped passes due to wet hands or the wind kicking a field goal just a little to the left.
Doesn't K-State have a great meteorology school? I feel like
they
would.
Agriculture, veterinary,
Okay.
business.
Okay.
Yeah, no
Mississippi
meteorology
State,
school.
I think,
you
has,
would think though.
Yeah, that part of the country especially.
Tornadoes.
I feel like Mississippi State has a good meteorology school. But yeah, anyway.
Okay, maybe
you
that'll
would
be
have
my
been a great
next move.
meteorologist, So in
Could you
another
imagine
life.
me standing up there with the green screen drawing
Yeah.
circles? Yes, that would go over very well.
You could have spent $60,000 to go to meteorology school and not use it the way Davey did to go to law school, graduate, and then not become a lawyer.
I'm pretty
Teach
sure
his own.
the meteorology school in Mississippi State is just for broadcasting. So it's just like the broadcasting aspect of meteorology.
But that's where it would be so perfect. Because I've already now got the broadcasting thing under wraps. Now I just actually have to learn how to forecast the weather. And all it is looking at data points just like gambling.
See, I didn't know there was a difference between studying broadcast meteorology from studying meteorology.
I learned that at law school, actually.
I thought that you were going to have to be.
I just assumed they were all broadcasters. I mean, if you're going to chase tornadoes, that's a completely different career than the woman standing in front of the green screen in the very tight dress. Oh, wait, that's Univision.
But see, I assumed that they're all meteorologists. Like, silly me. I thought they all had a degree in meteorology and that they actually knew it when they were on there talking about it. Apparently not. Broadcast meteorology different from being a meteorologist. Lions this weekend. I don't know the segue here. I don't have some clever way to get into this one.
They're in a dome. Here you go. No weather involved.
No meteorology involved unless you're trying to get to the game. That's the only thing you got to worry about in this one, Kelly.
Yeah, I was going to go to this game. I have a company that I own part of, and all the guys live in Detroit. So over the summer, they said, "Hey, we're playing your Broncos. Let's go." And then the Broncos
You
started
own
off 1-5.
Ford Motor Company? Hold on, breaking news here. That's the company that you own. All the guys live in Detroit. Amazing, good job.
They also always
Way
say
to go, Kelly.
no better time than December 17th to visit Detroit.
Yeah, always.
Listen,
a good time
I
of year.
love Detroit. I love those blue collar esque cities with tons of we'll call it history of sorts, right? There's just so much fun stuff with Motown and everything. So I love Detroit, but you're right. If I had my choice, I'd prefer to go to Detroit in September, not December. And then when the Broncos started off 1-5, I said, I am not coming to this game. Somebody give away my ticket for free. This team's going to have 3 wins come this game. And then boom, they go on a crazy win streak. The defense finally comes to play. Sean Payton looks like a genius. And you have Russell Wilson essentially playing turnover-free football. That was until the Texans game. And we've kind of seen them flatten out here. I was on Denver last week versus the Chargers. And now that win does not look near as good. So this Detroit team laying 4.5 here at home. I think a lot of people are starting to kind of panic on the Lions, right? They lost to the Packers on Thanksgiving. Then they just go and lose in Soldier Field. But that is to be expected. That is what the Lions do. This is still the same old Lions team. Don't let them fool you. The offensive line had some banged up guys. The defense, there was a point where it was just Jared Goff. We've got to outscore the other team. But they have won 4 of their last 5 home games. Again, Jared Goff, we talked about that climate-controlled environment, Chad. That is where he thrives. Denver, yep, this is their 3rd straight road game. Whoever made the schedule for the Broncos did them no favors here. I like the 4.5 with the Lions.
With your knowledge of Detroit, Kelly, you're the perfect person to ask this question. I was out here having a conversation with some of the people at 6th and Peabody that work here one afternoon, and someone was going to Detroit for a hockey game. And we got into this broad conversation about whether or not Detroit actually has a really nice hotel. And I assured them, I said, a city of that size that at one point was such a power player in the auto industry and had a lot of executives in town, I guarantee you there is like an old, nice hotel that is a 5-star hotel somewhere in downtown Detroit. Am I wrong to assume that Detroit does, in fact, have at least one really nice hotel?
I always used to stay at the casino for obvious reasons. So I would say this. Look, downtown Detroit has become absolutely and utterly gorgeous. They have done a really good job. Greek Town's down there, lots of fun restaurants, lots of fun bars. They have pumped a lot of money into reviving Detroit. So I'm sure that high-end hotel is well on its way.
Yeah, Detroit's back. Are the Saints back, Kelly? That's your next best bet.
This one is painful. I'm going to say this in a really gross way. I don't want to take the Saints here, but I have to take the Saints here. This is a Saints team that shouldn't be able to blow anyone out. This is a Saints team no one is going to want to back here with Tommy DeVito and the Giants. Tommy, everybody loves Tommy. Of course they do. But look, the Giants, while they have shown some prowess with Tommy DeVito under center, there is a point in time where I think the bottom's going to fall off, right? And we haven't seen a lot from Barkley as of late. He finally broke one and got me over his rushing yards in the last game against the Packers. But look, the Saints, I understand why nobody would want to lay points with them. They are just so mediocre. We have Derek Carr, who even the Raiders didn't want. And if it's not going to be Derek Carr, it's going to be Jameis Winston or, some combination of him and Taysom Hill, who is also questionable. The Saints have been terrible under Dennis Allen's watch. This is not a play on the Saints. This is a play against Mr. What are we calling him these days?
Tommy
the guy
Cutlets.
with the hand. Tommy Cutlets.
Tommy Cutlets.
And
gotta listen to Tommy Cutlets.
It's going to be a tough road game for him here. I have a feeling I'm going to hate myself late in the fourth quarter, but I do think the Saints will prevail and cover the 6.
They desperately need it as they're in that 3-way tie for the NFC South. And, the Falcons, they get the Panthers. So it's one of those games. If they want to keep pace, this is one they need to have.
It's Davey's favorite division.
I love it.
He loves this race for the team that's going to be under 500 that wins the division.
Oh, God. The NFC South, what are we doing here? We've used to bag on the AFC South and say you should just take every single one of the team totals under for the regular season wins. Now it's moved to the NFC South. It is just a race to the bottom. And luckily for the other 3 teams, they all get to play the Panthers.
It's also one of those divisions I could see all 4 coaches being fired from. We've already had one fired, so.
Well,
I did ask that question about Todd Bowles early in the season, but his defense has been playing a lot better. I unfortunately cannot get to the window with the Bucs this week. I do lean towards the Packers, but Todd Bowles, I think, might have saved his job with the second half of the season.
Okay.
Who's putting up 63 points? The Raiders. Aiden O'Connell, not Derek Carr. So let's keep that in mind when we talk about AOC. Aiden O'Connell. Cardinals, another best bet for you this week, Kelly.
Yeah, this one's gross. Come on, it's the Cardinals. Nobody wants to take the 12 with this team against, everybody we're ready to give the Lombardi to, the San Francisco 49ers. And why not? Brock Purdy now in the front running for MVP. This is a lot of points for a divisional home underdog with Kyler Murray being back under center for this team. I do not think that we're going to see some high scoring, crazy affair here. I could see it being 24-17 type of final where San Francisco gets the win, Cardinals off a bye, and hypothetically keeps it close enough just to cover. This is a big number here. And obviously the Cardinals are better with Kyler Murray under center. Divisional home underdogs have been cashing at a great rate this year. So I have no choice but to take another one.
How was your last weekend, Kelly, from a betting perspective?
And it was the best NFL weekend I have had all season. I thrive. I literally have to embrace those weekends and just soak it all in because it is the NFL. It is so hard to bet week in and week out. The bookmakers scrutinize these lines. They study it harder than anything. They follow the injury trends. They know the overreactions. They know where the public money is going to come in before they even put the number out. The NFL is the hardest market to beat. So to have a weekend like I had last weekend to just basically run the table was nothing short of incredible.
You're riding a hot streak into this weekend is what I'm hearing. So there you go. Kelly is going with Bills, Lions, Saints, Cardinals. Take her advice. And she didn't hate my pick of Texas to cover 7.5 against LSU in college basketball. Hey, when we come back, final segment of the week, we got things we haven't hit yet we need to. I want one pick your poison question from Davey Hudson. And we also are going to talk about the transfer portal and how it is absolutely pillaging FCS level players. We'll talk about that and more when we come back. This is Hot Mic across the OutKick Network.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, the bold taste of a Southern legend.
We're back. Hot Mic is part of the OutKick Network. Thanks to everyone for tuning in throughout the week. I'm Chad Withrow. Jonathan Hutton normally here. He'll be back on Monday. Kelly Stewart did a fabulous job filling in for Hutton, and she's on with us right now. So many things to get to. A lot of things happening right now. Holiday season. A lot of football going on. Some things that we missed throughout the show that I do want to get back to. One of them was during our Pick Your Poison segment, where Davey Hudson joins us and gives us a chance to pick between the best of a lot of bad options. And this is a college football playoff championship weekend related Pick Your Poison. And Kelly, I wanted to get your response to this Pick Your Poison question from Davey.
Yes, and the genesis of this question revolves around, we know Florida State was left out, and so as we expanded the 12-team playoff, a lot of conversation's been about, will we see conference championships go away? So my question to you all is, would you rather have the 12-team playoff with no conference championships or 4-team playoff with conference championships?
I'll start, Kelly. I'd rather have the 12-team playoff without conference championships, but it's close because if you take away the championship Saturday, that's a lot of fun every year, right? When you get to that weekend, in those games, that's become a tradition in college football. We're starting a new tradition with these games being played on campus in a 12-team format. So I'd rather take that trade-off and have those new playoff games that are going to be played on campus and seeing that. But I like championship weekend also. Where do you fall on this?
I love championship weekend, right? Those are usually two teams that really hate each other. So this year we got to see Alabama, Georgia. We got to see Oklahoma State, Texas. Now, for some reason, Iowa just had a nothing burger, but they still all hate Michigan. And then, of course, the ever exciting that will never happen again, Pac-12 championship that was just a complete and utter shootout between Oregon and Washington State. I really enjoy it. Do I think the 4-team playoff is flawed? Of course I do. So if I have to choose between loving conference championship weekend and a 12-team playoff, I don't think the 12-team playoff is going to be that great. I really don't.
Wow.
We're going to have people bitch and complain just like we did this year because the 13th and 14th team is going to get snubbed. It's going to be the same teams year in and year out. They're going to let in 3 or 4 SEC teams instead of 1 or 2. They're never going to get left on the outside looking in. That's why Florida State got snubbed, is because they couldn't have Alabama standing there on the outside looking in after winning the SEC championship. And they would have rather left out Florida State, who ran the table. And that's where the real problem arises. Now, if we had 14 teams get in and we had some really fun group of 5 schools and we had some really interesting, like a team that won the AAC, right? Or a team that won Conference USA, having those teams come in and they might get lambasted by an Alabama or a Texas or a Florida State, but they deserve to get in. And I just know it's going to be flawed. So for right now, until I see otherwise, I got to keep the conference championships.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where as we come full circle, and like if Georgia didn't play in the conference championship game, they're playing in the college football playoff right now. So that's kind of where that conversation of getting rid of that game comes from. And then if you look at it, as Russ Cole once said, time is a flat circle. You have Baylor and TCU in 2014 not make the college football playoff because they didn't have a conference championship game in the Big 12.
Yeah.
So now they obviously implemented that game, and we know Texas winning that was what catapulted them into the college football playoff this season. So I know a lot of people are not happy with the way in which college football is going. It's getting away from, the regionality, the passion, and while I still think the passion will be there, it's heading more towards that NFL model. And it's one of those things to where you're going to see people continue to hold on to the past. And if you're holding on, you can keep holding on tight, but I don't think it's going to matter.
Yeah, it's a good argument that you guys kind of make about the 12-team playoff and where it's definitely going to be flawed, like everything else. And I get that part of it. I do like, you mentioned, Conference USA, the AAC champion. You are going to get the best group of 5 that's going to automatically be in that 12-team playoff, which I like that part of the format of it. So we're going to see that. And we're still going to complain, you're right, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We're going to complain about those every year. Here is one, and I'm all for the 12-team playoff as opposed to the 4. And I like championship weekend, too. I want to have both. But if I had to pick one, I would pick 12-team. But like Kelly, I like that the championship weekend. one unintended consequence that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about. Now suddenly 75% of Power 5 programs believe their team should be in a 12-team playoff. And that is going to cause a lot more headaches for head coaches. Because I do think the expectations are going to rise that with a 4-team playoff, no one cares if you don't get in, right? Because they expect the same 3 or 4 teams in, and they understand why you're not there. But when you open it up to 12, well, that's half of the top 25. So now there's a lot of programs out there thinking, why can't we get there in the next 5 years? Why can't this coach that we've hired, he's been there 7 years. And while he goes 7-5 or 8-4 most years, that's not good enough for us because he's not in the college football playoff. What happens when Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss is suddenly missing a 12-team playoff every year? Ole Miss fans going to say, well, we're too good for this. We need to be in that 12-team playoff. That is an unintended consequence. I think it's going to up the pressure on coaches to get in that 12-team playoff. And most may not care about that. But, Kelly, you know, fans are unrealistic with their own expectations at times. And that is going to be
bad.
That's going to be the expectation. I think about my alma mater, Tennessee. You better believe Tennessee fans are going to expect to be there 2 out of every 4 years.
Yeah, but they're not they cannot let 4 SEC teams in.
No.
Here's what's going
they're not
going
to get there that often, too, is what I'm trying to warn Tennessee fans about, right? They're going to get in eventually, I'm sure, with a 12-team playoff. But to think you're going to be there annually, I don't think that's realistic. And this is coming from a program that's top 10 all-time college football in wins. I'm saying that just currently based on the state of things.
Here's the problem. So let's look at who would actually be in this year, right?
You would have 4 SEC teams.
You would have 4 SEC teams, right, this year. And you would have to allow some other teams in that probably don't deserve to be there, right? That are going to get boat raced. And we know that from a gambling perspective that they just cannot compete. And maybe in a 1-game sample size, we'll get some really fun upsets.
Well, with a bye, I think it makes it better, right? So those top 4 teams we're talking about boat racing the other ones. You're going to have to win a game to play them.
Very
so
true.
I think 12 versus 5 is going to be pretty competitive. I would hope.
Right.
6 versus 11.
Let's use Oregon versus Liberty this year. They would possibly be playing each other in the college football playoff, and Oregon's now a 16-point favorite.
But see, you were just arguing about you want to see those teams, right? That's the give and take of it.
I don't want to see those teams. That's the problem.
You don't want to see a group of 5 teams.
The bet. It's not that I don't want to see. The problem is when they run the table like New Mexico State essentially did, right, in Conference USA, they're going to let them in. I mean, they did beat Auburn this year. That was pretty crazy as big,
I'm
huge
all for
underdogs.
letting them in. I mean, look, we have a 16 seed play a 1 seed every year in the NCAA tournament.
Right.
We love it. Like even when they're usually getting killed.
That makes more sense with 64 teams because there's 330 college basketball teams. I guess my problem is that they're not going to allow 2 Big 12 teams and they're not going to allow 2 Big 10 teams. So when they allow 4 SEC teams,
they're going to allow 2 Big 10 teams in. Here's what's going to happen: the Big 10's going to get 3, the SEC is going to get 4. Now you've got 4 spots between the Big 12 and the Pac-12, right?
No,
That's basically
out.
what you're doing.
It's going to be the ACC, so that's going to be the problem.
I forgot about the ACC for good reason. They just had a team go undefeated and win the conference championship and couldn't get in the playoff, unfortunately. And I hate that for Florida State, by the way.
That's the issue here. That's the problem here at hand, is no one is going to be happy. People are going to riot in the streets if 4 SEC teams get in. They're going to be pissed off if only 1 Big 12 team gets in or 1 ACC team gets in.
And they're just going to be upset. One of the other unintended consequences I actually think might be interesting to follow is with the way in which the transfer portal is operating. Right now, if Lane Kiffin was having to prepare his team for a game, he's been all over the place trying to recruit kids. He's getting all these other guys into the transfer portal. I think while I want college football to be more like NFL in the level of parity, having 12 teams that are just having to focus on making sure that they're winning that next game while you have a lot of other coaches that are just able to go out and continue recruiting, going into the portal, picking other guys off their roster.
Yeah.
But if they don't, that's an added benefit for those teams that don't make it this year. That's going to hurt the teams that are in it this season. And I think it might help level the playing field just a tad. But I think it'll be fun. And that's where you have to make sure you're managing your personnel at the highest level possible.
I would agree. But a head coach like Lane Kiffin, it's his job to go there and shake hands and kiss babies and get these either transfers or recruits in. I don't think it actually is going to hurt them in the bowl game as a day-to-day. Do you?
Well, not for just the bowl games that we now view as meaningless. But like a great example now is Malik Murphy's entering the transfer portal. So while you're having to keep your own guys, you're still having to recruit your own guys as you're getting set to play a playoff game. Just like now, that is something a lot of people aren't talking
no
about.
backup quarterback, unless of course Arch Manning goes in for that one. That's going to be really interesting. You make a very good point, Davey.
They got to change the calendar. To Davey's point, that's got to happen. Where this is all not happening at the same time, and I hate, and it's reality, but I hate that we're just automatically saying, well, these bowl games that don't matter. It's a game.
Why do you think I asked Barrett?
It's one of 13. Barrett likes bowl games. I like watching bowl games too.
I do too.
But I'm thinking
it seems like it doesn't matter to coaches and players.
It doesn't.
I want it to matter. Trust me. Imagine trying to handicap these games when you got to figure out who cares and who doesn't. How do you handicap motivation?
I hate that fans also have to come back and say, if they don't care, why do I care? And that's a very honest assessment of the situation. If they don't care, why do I care? Because most of them seemingly don't. But I want to care about it because it's one of 13 opportunities you have over a whole year to compete against another team. And if you're working that hard and doing that much, I just don't. My little brain can't comprehend how coaches and players and everyone aren't all in on those 13 opportunities, even if you get one bonus one in some lower level bowl game. But whatever. Maybe I'm an old man with that.
No, it's an incredible opportunity. Look how much more practice time you get just making a bowl game. Barrett commented before we went on about my Bill Snyder book, and actually there's parts of that in that book talking about the importance of just getting to that bowl game and how important it is for your program, not only monetarily wise, extra practices, recruiting, and so forth. And I don't know why they aren't. I mean, I'm really sad. K-State's bowl game is 2 hours away from me, and I'm going to be in Nashville filling in for you. I was really sad. I said, why did I commit to this? Oh, because I thought K-State would be in Texas again, and I just didn't feel like going to Texas for the 4th time this year.
Got to learn how to say no, Kelly. That's all I can tell you. You'd be at that K-State game if you could. Hey, quickly, we got to get to our NFL Eliminator. Davey, you're up first on this one.
I am up first, and I won last week, so I will take my victory lap there. We have not discussed what the winner gets for this. I mean, it took us to week 15 to get here, but I went with the 49ers last week. They were able to get it done, and guess what? I'm going back to the well. Because the round starts over, so I am taking San Francisco over Arizona. And again, it's just money line, so I'm going to roll with the Niners.
Hutton is going with the Kansas City Chiefs to bounce back and win this week, so we'll make that selection for him. In absentia, Hutton's going with the Chiefs. I'm going with the Dolphins to bounce back. Terrible performance at home. The Titans tried to give them the game, spotted them 21 points, and the Dolphins would not take it. The Titans took it back from them. Titans not a good team. I think the Dolphins bounce back, and I do not see the Jets playing the way they did in the second half offensively against Houston for a second straight week. Give me the Dolphins to beat a Jets team we just saw them handle recently against the Jets also. And those are our Eliminator picks for the week. Kelly, fun times the last couple days. So you will come back now, even after doing this for the last 2 shows, right?
Yes, of course. I will see you next Friday to fill in for Hutton once again. I hope he's really enjoying all this vacation time.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's with some family, so he's doing very well. So that's going to be fun. Holiday season upon us. Davey, still not a lawyer, but doing a good job for us this week. Next best thing, right, Davey? Is being
I enjoy this more.
A free lawyer on staff. What are you complaining about?
The reason I got through law school.
He's not a lawyer. This is like calling a dentist a doctor. Wasn't that a whole plot on Seinfeld also? He's not a lawyer.
That's not what that is on. It's from The Hangover. Nobody cares about Seinfeld.
I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon for 1 year in school.
There's no way.
I took classes for it.
There's no way I would let you operate on me.
That doesn't make me a fourth of an orthopedic surgeon because I went to 1 year of studying that.
I've got the degree. I mean, I don't know. Like, what more do you want? Like, I had the opportunity to go and do sports radio.
That's
and
what
I chose it, and I love it.
All right, so there we go. That's going to be some sort of bet in the future.
Hey,
Davey loses, he has to take the bar.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Appreciate you tuning in.